Hello, you still awake with history in the middle of the night. Tonight, we're going back to a place filled with the scent of sweat perfume and something you really wouldn't want to step on barefoot. When you think of a Roman bathhouse, you might picture something like a modern spa: warm water, marble floors, the sound of trickling streams, and distinguished gentlemen soaking in the golden light of sunset, like a stock photo for an article on total relaxation. But behind that glossy image, hidden in the steam filled walls and echoing laughter, was a group of people who were never invited to soak their feet because they were the ones scrubbing the floor, the cleaners, the invisible hands that turned this place into a symbol of civilization, yet whose names were never spoken. Do you think you could handle that job for an afternoon? Not as a guest, but as the one picking up hair, wiping up oil, and occasionally dealing with little accidents. Well, then let's try stepping into their shoes for once. Dim, the lights turn on. A quiet fan, if you have one, the breeze will be the soundtrack for this journey. Lie back, take a deep breath, and imagine you've just woken up in a tiny room next to an ancient Roman public bathhouse. What's waiting isn't a soft sofa or a warm cup of coffee, but a bucket of murky water, a frayed mop, and a long day full of human smell ahead of you. Ready? Because with just one step, you're covered in grease, sweat, and a little bit of history. Let's begin. You chew slowly, cautiously, as if the bread might fight back. Its taste lands somewhere between cold ash and disappointment. Your teeth clack like broken pottery. You swallow not because you're hungry, but because you don't want to chew again. And just like every day, work calls you without knocking. You leave your room and step into the bathhouse courtyard, where yesterday's heat still lingers on the tiles and the scent of people has returned even before sunrise. The air is a mix of old steam, cheap oils, and things no one bothers to name. You grab the water bucket, dented and worn. It's been with you through more summers than your sandals. A streak of green mold runs down the side like a warning, but mold doesn't bother you anymore. At least it doesn't bark orders. The first room is the tepidarium, where the water's not too hot, not too cold, but enough to make you sweat after 3 steps. The thick mist seeps into your pores, whispering that today will be just as miserable as yesterday. You bend down and begin wiping the stone tiles, still holding footprints from the day before. Some spots are as slick as grease, others as sticky as glue, and some, better not to ask. Your hands are calloused, but your knees still ache like new. A regular walks past and looks at you like you're an old vase that someone left in the wrong corner. He says nothing, just glances. You lower your head out of habit, then keep scrubbing. Whatever pride remains is tucked into the rag you're wringing out. And the funny thing is, the rag gets cleaner, but you only get dirtier. You move into the caldarium, where the heat could boil an egg inside your shoe. It hits your face like a wet slap. Each time you bend over, sweat drips onto the stone, sizzles faintly like sacred water. Sometimes you feel like you're in a stew pot, just missing the onions and carrots. And right then, someone steps on your hand. No apology, no glance back, just a wet, heavy foot, cold and indifferent as the social hierarchy. You scrub the floor with your hands, your rag, and something called faint hope. There are no gloves here, no clean water reserves, just you, the stone, and whatever others have left behind. Sometimes you find a coin, the only thing that glimmers in the dim oil light. But it's never a reward. It's trash. And you're the one who gathers it. After the caldarium, it's time to check the water tanks, where rats and sparrows sometimes bathe side by side. You crouch down to scoop out debris with a makeshift net, a wooden frame, and a scrap of old towel. Sometimes you spot something floating soft brown drifting. You close your eyes, scoop it up, and toss it without asking. You've learned that in this job, not everything with a name is worth naming. Sometimes you wonder if you disappeared, who would notice? Maybe the rat behind the kitchen, the one you secretly share your bread with each evening. Or maybe the water bucket that creaks every time you carry it through the hall as if it's trying to call your name. But beyond that, no one. Because cleaning doesn't leave marks, it erases other people's. Midday comes. You steal a few minutes under the dried fig tree outside, gnawing on the last of your bread. Your eyes blink from the sunlight, but your mind is still chasing stains left unfinished. A fellow worker walks by, no greeting, no smile, just quietly sets a dry cloth beside you. A small gesture, but somehow warmer than any hot bath. You rise again, step back into the cycle. Scrub floors fold, cloths scoop up hair. Not because anyone told you to, but because if you don't, who will? And then, as you bend down to wipe one last splash of water, you see your face reflected on the stone floor, faint, distorted, but real. And you smile. Not because you're happy, but because you can still smile. And that's enough for the morning. You bend down, starting with the corner no one pays attention to. That spot always holds surprises, tangled hair, flakes of skin, and something sticky that looks like bread, but no one would dare eat. The rag soaks up warm brownish water, thick and smelling like herbal tea left out on a rooftop. You scrub while avoiding a closer look at anything. Your survival instincts have learned not to ask questions. Steam trickles from the ceiling, making the whole room feel like one giant steamer pot. Your skin starts to sweat within 3 minutes, and you haven't even picked up the second mop yet. Every time you kneel, your knees crackle like door hinges that haven't seen oil in years. Every time you stand, it feels like you're lifting the entire Roman Empire on your back. That's when a voice calls out from the distance. Hurry up in there. The hot room's waiting. You mutter something no one can hear, mostly just to stay sane. The room looks quiet, but you know that under these clean stones lies a layer of user memories. You found a ring before 3 earrings and one tooth. You drop them into a jar you jokingly call the Museum of Forgotten Things. The manager never asks about it. Maybe he doesn't want to know. There is no pleasant corner in the tepidarium. Every tile is cold to the touch, but hot to stand on. You once thought of writing a poem about it, then remembered you have no paper, no pen, and certainly no time. So you settle instead for naming each stain: Monday morning streak, source-free sweat smudge, eternal oil shadow. Once you slipped right in the middle of the room and landed like a half-washed towel. Someone chuckled. Someone didn't notice. Someone walked past you as if you were part of the architecture. You thought, if I passed out here, I'd probably be cleaned by a coworker in perfect silence. That thought felt oddly warm and concerning. You prop yourself up, resume scrubbing, with the energy of a warrior who's just lost their first battle. Sweat, stone dust, and dignity swirl together like a sauce no one wants to taste. Your mop is falling apart, threads splaying like your mood at 3 p.m. You consider asking for a new one, then remember this one's still better than the next. While cleaning, you spot a circular print on the stone like a footprint, but with 5 toes and claws. Not human. Maybe a dog, maybe a bored god. You stare for a moment, then wipe it away, like wiping away a question better, left unasked. Moments later, it reappears. You wipe it again. The ancient world is full of strange things, and this isn't one of the fun ones. Midway through, you rinse your rag in a tub of water that's changed color 3 times in an hour. Your hands turn red, not from warmth, but from warm pollution. A customer complains from the steam room. The floor's too slippery. You bow your head, I know, then turn away and keep scrubbing. No rebuttal needed. Silence is a skill too. You finish the tepidarium after nearly an hour, and it still looks like no one's cleaned a thing. The last light of day filters through the high window, casting a glow on the floor, as if praising a forgotten effort. You sit down, leaning your back against the wall, eyes fixed on the blotchy ceiling. You don't hope for praise. You just hope that smell leaves your shirt before next week. But it never does. You started your shift like a warrior, but without armor, without weapons, and definitely without glory. Just a torn rag, a bucket of murky water, and a series of life decisions that led you here. You look down at your hands, cracked, calloused, and stained with enough lime and plaster to look like something dug out of Pompeii. Someone once said, labor is glory. Maybe they never cleaned a Roman bath. The water in your bucket is the color of old iced tea and smells like something that once lived and died between two stones. You try not to think about rats, but then you remember yesterday's lying belly up in the tank feet raised like it was meditating. You didn't scream, you just sighed and fished it out with a wooden stick. Everything here begins with just hold on a little longer. You bend down, wiping between each stone groove like carving your name into history, a history no one will read. Lime dust floats into your eyes, your nose, sometimes your drinking cup. The air is thick like leftover stew. Your back creaks like an old wooden door. But the moment you hear footsteps, you straighten up, flash a faint smile, as if enjoying a wellness morning the Roman way. Once an official passed by, his robe flowing like a poster for ancient fashion week. He looked at you, said nothing, just sniffed, and walked off, leaving a golden trail of sandal dust across your freshly scrubbed floor. You looked at that dust like you'd look at your childhood, short, blurry, and no one cared. Then you wiped it away, along with what little pride you had left. A child pokes his head through the door, spits, then runs. You watch without anger. Roman kids or TikTok kids, it's the same. If someone's head is down, it's fair game. You lift the water bucket. It groans in protest. But you don't listen. You've still got places to clean, and dirty water somehow never runs out. You try slapping the rag against the floor to wring out more water, and in that moment, a drop flings back into your face, salty, warm, and full of meaning. You smile a smile no one sees, no one remembers, but no one can take from you either. Because sometimes just surviving the morning is a win. And you're a bathhouse cleaner, which makes you an expert in victories no one celebrates. You move to the space beneath the stone bench, where light doesn't reach, but trash always finds its way. Something soft presses beneath the rag. You pause, look closer, then decide not to ask. In a Roman bathhouse, the most dangerous things aren't what you see. They're what you touch when you're not fully awake. Your hands tremble not from fear, but from fatigue. You've been scrubbing barehanded for 2 hours, and your finger joints have begun filing complaints. But you keep going not out of passion, but because no one's told you to stop. So you clean and clean, as if the floor were the empire. and you were its peacekeeper, with nothing but a damp rag and fragile hope. There's a moment where you think about leaving, walking away from it all, starting a new life growing grapes, or selling incense. But then you remember every job has its own smell, and at least here you know whose scent is whose. There's strange comfort in that, a truth that reeks but makes more sense than love or taxes. A barehanded shift doesn't end with a bell, it ends with a sigh. You rinse your hands in the old water, black as your mood, but at least no longer hot. You sit on a cold stone step, your back curved like a tired bow, and you close your eyes for just a minute. Just 1 minute before the voice from the caldarium calls your name like fate. You had just finished wiping the rim of the tub when a noble woman walked in, strutting like the floor had been left to her in a will. She demanded the water be as warm as spring sunlight on the hills of Tibur. You've never been to Tibur, and certainly not in spring. You mixed the water, tested it with your hand, and nodded. Still, she frowned, as if you'd boiled it using your mop rag. Then she walked away, leaving behind a puddle and 3 floating glares. Another guest stepped in, claiming the water was as cold as a mother-in-law's heart. You didn't ask further. You just fetched another bucket and poured it gently, like a part-time water acrobat. Yet the man still dipped his foot in for less than 2 seconds and screamed like he'd been bitten by a snake. You tilted your head. Maybe that mother-in-law didn't live in Italy. You pulled a clean towel from the basket and offered it to a merchant, leaving the steam room. He looked at the towel, then at you, as if you had just insulted his entire lineage. "This isn't my towel," he said. You apologized. He responded with a huff and dropped the towel onto the floor. You had just cleaned that floor 5 minutes ago. There's a senator who always brings his own soap and a habit of throwing it at your head whenever he's dissatisfied. You once considered wearing a cap, but after he said the cap was undignified, you abandoned the idea entirely. One day he missed, and the soap hit the wall. He looked at you and said, "I'll let you go this time like you just escaped a death sentence." A group of soldiers barged in after training, covered in mud, reeking of wine and full of noise. They stomped on your mop like it was a piece of bread dropped in the marketplace. One of them laughed loudly. "Sorry, pal," then stepped on it again. You nodded, not out of forgiveness, but because if you didn't nod, you'd cry. One afternoon, the manager came to inspect the floor. He squinted at the far corner of the caldarium and said, "Not shiny enough." You told him the floor had been scrubbed twice. He didn't hear you. He just pointed his finger, always finds nameless tasks. So you scrubbed again, because in a Roman bathhouse clean is a feeling, not a standard. Someone wants the floor dry, yet cool underfoot. Another says the lighting is too harsh, the tiles too slippery, the scent not personalized enough. You hear it all, remember most of it, and redo nearly everything each hour. You once tried saying that's impossible only to receive the look that says, "Then let someone else do it." And you continued, because you still haven't learned how to disappear. Sometimes you meet a kind person. All they need is water, a towel, and a bit of quiet. You serve them like you would serve yourself, secretly hoping they don't come back. Because kind people don't last long here. They'll find the place too loud, too dirty, or too much like a failed ancient spa commercial. You once tried smiling at a guest only to be met with a puzzled look. Cleaners can smile. You thought about printing a shirt that says, "I have feelings, sir," but then remembered you're not allowed a shirt, only a wrap, and wraps don't come with slogans. So you kept smiling to yourself. Still, there are rare moments of kindness. An old woman forgot her towel. You handed her a fresh one. She nodded and whispered, "Gratus." You almost didn't believe your ears. The first thank you in 6 months. That moment, small, fragile, unseen, was enough to keep you scrubbing that slippery floor for one more day. You open the door to the caldarium and immediately feel like you've stuck your head into a pot of thin, sweat flavored soup. The air isn't exactly hot, it's humid, thick, and sticky, like spoiled syrup left out overnight. Everything is hazy, dreamlike. If your dreams included exhaustion, sweat, and nasal congestion, each breath tastes like a spoonful of human broth. And you've never been that hungry. Stone benches line both walls, gleaming in the lamplight and covered with the prints of many behinds. You bend down to scrub each tile like you're polishing a statue of a god, except gods don't sweat, don't leave oil stains, and definitely don't sneeze in your face. By the 10th streak, your hands are numb, your nose can't detect scent, and you're unsure if you're still alive or just oversteamed. But then the manager's voice calls, and you know not yet. Not done. An old man lounging in a steamy corner looks at you like you're part of the entertainment package, steam and live comedy. He laughs, says something about youth and labor. You can't hear him clearly, not because you're rude, but because your ears are ringing from the heat. Then he lifts his foot and plants it squarely into the puddle you just mopped. You mop it again silently, redefining the word pointless. There's a spot on the stone floor so sticky the rag clings like wood glue. You yank hard, lose your balance, and bump your head against a bench, just painful enough to wake you up, not enough to call in sick. A young woman walks by and glances at you like you're some peculiar artifact. You force a smile. She turns away trailing a perfume cloud of orange blossom and bitter citrus. While scrubbing the stairs, warm water drips down the back of your neck. No one's above you. You don't ask. In the caldarium, things fall from the ceiling from pipes, or possibly from the whims of bathhouse deities. You just keep wiping wet hands, sticky hair feet sliding slightly, like you're rehearsing for Roman figure skating. One wrong step, and you'd be the show's main act. And you're not built for center stage. The bench against the wall is always the most dangerous. There you not only scrub deeply, but also pretend not to notice the forgotten items, towels, combs, a single shoe, and occasionally something more personal. You pick them up with 2 fingers gently, like picking up a thought, then drop them into a woven basket reserved for things best not asked about. The cleaner before you called it the Museum of Oblivion. One day, the heat climbed too high and you felt yourself floating, not metaphorically, actually losing balance and tumbling into a water tub, bubbles fizzing like applause. You stood up, hair soaked, wrap, clinging face, redder than an overripe tomato. A guest raised an eyebrow. "Free soak." "Huh?" you replied, just missing a slice of lemon. You rested for a few minutes by the door where the heat was less violent. Sweat dripped from your chin into your faded linen wrap. Someone once said, "Sweat is the body's tears." You thought, if that's true, your body's writing a novel. But the caldarium doesn't care for literature. Then you step in to mop one last time, the final sweep, as you call it. Your hands tremble, not from fear, but from nerves long gone numb. You look around. Fewer guests remain. The floor steams softly in the haze, and you can see your reflection in the stone tile. Blurry, blotchy, but still you. And you smile faintly. In the world of the Caldarium, that's a greater achievement than a promotion, because at least you haven't completely melted. You step into the room behind the Caldarium, the so called fire chamber, though it feels more like a metal forge than a maintenance room. The air is thick, acrid, and steeped in the scent of ash dust and secrets. You crouch beside the furnace, dragging a long rod through the charred coals, silently hoping no one asks why your pants always have burn holes at the knees. Your hands darken with every scrape, and your nose has learned to befriend the smell of sulfur. Here, oxygen is a luxury, and hell feels just one step away. Each time you finish raking, you check the giant hot water basin roughly the size of a small swimming pool. The water steams faintly like a ruined cup of tea, if that tea had once held rats and hair. Sometimes you spot something bobbing, maybe rotten wood, maybe soap scum, maybe a forgotten part of someone's body. And when it's clearly a scorched rat floating, like some culinary experiment gone wrong, you just sigh and fish it out with a skimmer older than you are. You don't scream, you don't shout, you just glance around checking that no guests are watching, because they're soaking, relaxing, laughing in that very same water. There's a strange truth in this place: if it isn't seen, it doesn't exist. And if the smell isn't strong enough to knock someone out, you don't have to explain it. You once suggested changing the water weekly. The manager looked at you like you just asked whether the Roman Empire needed more democracy. He shook his head, then said, "Just keep it hot. Don't scare the guests." You nodded, not out of agreement, but because dirty water is still better than getting fired. As you wipe the rim of the basin, a bead of sweat falls from your brow to your hand, but your hand was already wet with water grease and things better left unnamed. It feels like you're bathing in sweat, though not entirely your own. It's an ancient blend, a legacy not recorded in history books, a kind of holy water made of patience, breath holding, and the art of pretending not to notice. You touch a pipe just to check the temperature and nearly steam cook your fingers. The skin blisters lightly. You grit your teeth. Sometimes you feel more like a machine part. No maintenance, no lunch break. Just function until you break. And when you do, you'll probably be replaced by someone cheaper, quieter, and easier to ignore. You skim debris from the pool, sometimes leaves, sometimes moss, sometimes. Something you hope is a fig peel. These floaters feel like notes from the god of hygiene. Not done yet, my friend. One time you scooped up a bracelet. Gold. You looked around, no one saw. You slipped it into your pocket, meaning to return it, but forgot after being called back to scrub the caldarium. In this room, sweat is the only thing you produce consistently. It fills your shoes, soaks your towel, and turns you into a walking stovetop. You once thought of bottling it as medicine, genuine Roman bathhouse servant essence, but then remembered guests here only pay for the fantasy, never the truth. Every time you lift the furnace lid, the heat roars upward like a reminder that you haven't melted yet. Even though your body feels like cheese left out in the sun, you keep standing, keep scrubbing, keep raking, because if you don't, no one will, and the rats will swim freely in the pool without anyone to stop them. You finish the furnace check, shut the door, and wipe your sweat with a sleeve already soaked. You wonder if the guests know they're soaking in a broth of sweat rats and silent endurance. Maybe not, maybe they do, but you know, and you still stand there, like part of the giant pot full of heat sealed shut and absolutely not for dreamers. You sit down, your back against a mossy stone wall, the only spot not hot enough to fry meat. The floor is still damp, even after 3 moppings this morning. A cold trickle of old water sneaks past your heel and gives you a brief shiver. Oddly enough, that chill feels better than the ache in your back. Your bread is wrapped in a faded piece of linen, limp like it survived a light rain and a long life. You plan to chew it with your eyes closed, but the first bite reveals a long hair, philosophical in length, sliding out from inside. Not yours. You pull it out silently, not angry. You're used to sharing meals with stranger DNA. You haven't even taken a second bite when a shout erupts from the steam room service. It's not anger, it's power being declared. You rise instinctively, not thinking, not reacting. Just an ancient switch in your brain whispering, go, or the towel will fly. You hustle through the hallway, half a piece of bread still in hand. A child passes by, looks at your bread, then at you, and laughs. You don't know why, maybe because of the bread, or maybe because your wrap looks like a half finished curtain. You don't ask. You just finish the last bite, even though the bread is cold and your chest is colder. You arrive only to discover the guests needed a dry towel, one towel, something they could have grabbed themselves 3 steps away. But no, they have you, the cleaner, the absorber, the one always on call, always absorbing grievances. Like these sandals are a bit damp in a room filled with water. You return to the break area, the spot you just left. But now someone else is there, a coworker lying flat, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. You think about speaking up, but can't bring yourself to do it. Because you know a 1 minute break here is worth more than gold, more than imported Greek soap. So you head somewhere else, a more hidden corner, farther away, where no one will find you for 10 minutes. You sit this time with no wall to lean on. You look up at the ceiling, plaster flaking light trickling through a crack and trying to comfort you. You think about last night's dream. You were sitting in the hot bath not to scrub, but to soak. No one called, no one needed towels, and no hair in the bread. You close your eyes for exactly 1 minute, no more, because the sound of sandals slapping stone rings out like the world's worst alarm clock. You rise stone dust, clinging to your hands, your back, and your unfinished dream. A voice calls out from the changing room. This spot's filthy. You smile, softly, then go fetch the rag. Because sometimes smiling is the only way not to cry during a lunch break that's never long enough. The man entered as if performing a role in a play he had written and directed himself. White robe, soft leather shoes, and a perfume that hinted at cinnamon, lemon, and arrogance. You recognized the type instantly, not because he spoke loudly, but because he demanded the floor be dry, gleaming and reflective enough to mirror his dissatisfaction. You wiped the floor, once, then twice, then 3 times. After each pass, he tested the surface like an ice rink inspector, then frowned as if you had dropped an ancient cheese wheel into his beard. You bowed your head, not out of respect, but because if you looked up, you might say something you shouldn't. When he turned away, a silver denarius slipped from his pocket, gleaming like opportunity. You glanced around, no one noticed. The coin lay there silently, proudly, and absolutely off limits. You bent down, picked it up between 2 fingers, like catching a bug, and thought for exactly half a second before tucking it into your rag pocket. You didn't plan to spend it, but you didn't plan to return it either. Fairness here was as thin as a disposable towel. And if a coin falls from the pocket of someone who hasn't looked at you once during 30 minutes of service, maybe that's fate. or emotional compensation. The merchant requested another towel, one that was unscented, unroughed, and untouched. You fetched one, trying to choose the least terrible in a basket of terrible options. When you returned, he was scowling at a single drop of water on the stone bench. One drop, the size of a fingernail. You wiped it with the corner of your robe and silently thought, I wish I could wipe him too. At last he exited the room, like a weary swan after a ballet. No thanks, no nod. Just a trail of rich perfume and layered, unresolved emotions. You stood in the middle of the floor. You just cleaned, faintly damp and glistening with sweat, not even sure whose anymore. And you felt more exhausted than after a furnace shift. You sat on the doorstep, took the coin from your pocket, and looked at it. It was bright, but not radiant. Something in its smallness made you feel both triumphant and defeated. Part of you wanted to toss it away. The other part thought about bread, and you knew which part would win. You slipped it back into your rag pocket, told no one. Maybe someone would drop another coin tomorrow. Or not. But at least today, you survived a storm of cologne dry towels and aristocratic attitude. Sometimes, that's the only victory you get to hope for. You stepped into the frigidarium with a faint hope it would be a quiet day. Mistake. It seemed all of Rome had chosen your shift to take a soak. Splashing water, squeaky wet feet, shouting, all blending into a symphony not designed for the sleep deprived. You sighed, gripping your rag like a Roman soldier holding a sword into battle. The frigidarium is always as slick as your willpower after lunch. Every step coated with just enough water to slip, but not enough to sue. You crouch down to wipe, trying not to think about the scene above. Dozens dipping, stepping, twirling, falling. One person soaked their feet while eating grapes. Another cursed her husband while waist deep. And then there was you wiping and clinging to sanity. Cold water dripped from the hair of a tall man and landed squarely on the back of your neck. No apology. No awareness. You jolted upright, like a man waking from a bad dream. Your hands kept wiping, but your mind wandered, imagining wringing out your tunic and filling a small tub. You thought maybe I should start a bathwater line, authentic Roman bathhouse essence. Then the boy slipped, a loud thud, then crying. Every head turned toward you, the only person not soaking, not yelling, and holding a rag. His mother rushed over, picked him up, scanned the room for someone to blame. She found you, and without hesitation, the floor's filthy. Doesn't anyone clean this place? You stood there still holding the rag. Your robe soaked, your heart also soaked. You bowed your head. Ignosh mihi. The Latin slipped out like muscle memory. The woman said nothing more, just glared and walked off. The boy kept crying. You wiped the spot again, not because it was dirty, but because you needed something to do, to keep from losing your mind. A group of young men jumped from the higher steps into the water, splashing like they were performing circus tricks in Augustus's time. One yelled, "That's cold." Another laughed like he'd just invented ice. You kept wiping, dodging the spray and rethinking your career. Choices Potter Shepherd, even dried fish street hawker. You placed the rag on a stone step and sat down. The cold stones soaked through your thin robe, making you hunch like an old cat in a winter gust. A voice echoed from the next room. Anyone mopping the frigidarium? You didn't answer. You were busy calculating how many apologies it would take to earn one decent meal. You stood and resumed wiping. An older man dropped his towel. You bent to pick it up and handed it to him with both hands. He smiled and said, "Thank you." You nearly stumbled from shock, not because of the gratitude, but because you had forgotten that politeness still existed here. The frigidarium is the cold room, yet it makes you sweat more than the caldarium, not from heat, but from the effort of staying calm, keeping the rag from flying, holding your tongue, keeping your head cool enough to keep cleaning, and keeping your back from throwing out for the fourth time today. You finished the last step, looked at the floor, reflecting the dim light as if it whispered, "Hang in there." You stood up and twisted your back, hearing a small crack. It might have been a bone, or your robe peeling off your damp skin, but you didn't check. You just kept moving because more guests were arriving and the water never flows backward. You're mopping the floor near the caldarium when you hear the thudding of soldier boots, like war drums shaking the stone. The stench of fermented beer horse sweat and wet leather fills the room, creating a scent that feels like someone just opened the backstage door to a drunken circus. The soldiers aren't here to bathe, they're here to perform. They laugh loudly, swinging limbs, like you're made of air. And air, after all, doesn't need space. One of them built like a bull, and giggling like a toddler snatches your rag. He sniffs it, then bursts out laughing. Smells like Caesar's ass. You force a half smile. Another pats your back and shouts, "Gluteus, service, the servant of sacred buttocks." The whole group erupts with laughter. You keep your head down and keep wiping, as if this scene is happening in another bathhouse in a more polite universe. You once saw a coworker, Marcus, respond to teasing. He simply said enough and got punched straight into the wall. Broken teeth, crooked nose, and 3 days later, he vanished from the schedule. No one asked, no one looked. You remember that every time your hand tightens on the mop handle, and then you loosen your grip because your nose is still intact and you need it to breathe. One of them asks for hot water. You turn the valve. The water gushes out like a call from the underworld. The soldier dips his foot in and screams like he's been electrocuted. "Trying to boil me alive," he shouts, flinging his towel to the floor. You apologize. He doesn't hear. He's too busy laughing with his friends, like he just won a comedy contest. You bend to pick up the towel when you hear dry heaving behind you, then liquid hitting the wall. One of them has thrown up in the corner of the room. You cleaned that corner less than 5 minutes ago. You glance back. He's slumped against a pillar face, pale but still smirking. "Food from the tavern by the gate. Terrible," he mutters. You say nothing. Just go for the water bucket again for a task no one saw. You crouch down and begin cleaning the puddle of vomit, glistening like the map of a country no one wants to explore. The sour stench of old beer, meat grease, and black pepper stings your eyes. You exhale through your mouth. Even your breath smells like everything else in the room, sour, damp, and hopeless. And by the time you finish wiping, they're gone. No apology. Nothing left except silence, a sticky patch, and the nickname Gluteus Service echoing in your head. You're scrubbing the stone steps near the caldarium when a nobleman walks in, moving like he's about to hold a Senate session in the steam. He sits for less than 5 seconds before wrinkling his nose, lifting his chin, and saying, "This place smells common." No one asks what common smells like, but everyone knows what happens next. A moment later, the manager glances at you and says plainly, "Go scent the place." Scenting sounds like a refined ritual. In reality, it means crawling into the dark corner behind the steam room, where the smoke is as thick as porridge, to shove fragrant resin into the furnace. You carry a small sack of incense, a blend of agar wood cedar and the desperate hope no one vomits again. Smoke begins to rise, curling into a light fog, drifting through the room like an apology from someone who never shows up. You crouch down to feed the fire eyes, half shut from the sting. Sweat pours from your skin as if you've signed a contract with the furnace itself. A drop lands on the coals, hissing quietly. You cough, try to hold it in, but the smoke snakes through your nostrils and climbs straight to your eyes. They burn your throat, aches, and you wonder why does making things smell nice hurt so much. Suddenly, someone steps backward, maybe avoiding a loud conversation, and trips over you. He screams like you were a pressure-triggered mousetrap. You fall your hand, slamming against the furnace edge, and embers scatter like fiery rain. The man dusts off his robe and glares at you like you've ruined his entire experience of air. Blocking traffic, he mutters before walking away. No one asks if you're okay. No one helps you up. You sit there, hand throbbing, thinking maybe burning incense is just a fancy way to roast yourself alive. The only thing that doesn't burn is your pride because it already went up in flames during your first shift. You gather the scattered coals, blow gently to cool them, and rearrange them with care like it's a form of art. The fragrance begins to spread, soft, sweet, indulgent. Someone takes a deep breath and nods in approval. Someone else doesn't notice. Another says, "Smells nice today." No one knows you made it that way. No one wants to know. The scent they assume just exists like sunlight or running water. You step out of the room, your hands still smelling of smoke, fingers lined with resin. You don't have time to enjoy the scent yourself because another guest just complained that the changing room lacks fresh air. You grab your rag and keep moving, and the fragrance fades into the breeze, into bodies, into forgetfulness. Into the afternoon drags on with 3 more rounds of scenting 2 minor burns and 1 accusation of towel theft because you passed by at the wrong moment. Each time the smoke rises, you think maybe you'll get used to it, but you don't. You just learn to hold your breath longer. And smile in the smoke because if you don't, what's left besides ashes and embers? By day's end, you sit on the threshold of the bathhouse, watching the sun set through the mist rising from the tiled roof. The scent lingers faintly. No one remembers it, just like no one remembers you. But you know you left behind something not filthy, not wet, not needing to be scrubbed. A small, light, nameless scent. But it was yours. And sometimes that's enough. You step into the changing room as the afternoon light begins to fade. The glow of an oil lamp casts long shadows across the damp walls, highlighting the water streaks that linger on the stone floor. This space is meant to be a quiet pause between steam sessions, a resting place. In reality, it feels more like a battlefield of discarded robes, fallen towels, and the concentrated musk of humanity. Every time you enter, you brace yourself, body and stomach. You start by folding the robes one by one. Some are still warm. Others are wet in ways you'd rather not question. You hang them on wooden hooks as though they were temple garments, despite knowing they've been worn by men who don't believe in laundry. Occasionally, you find a small leather pouch, no coins, just a scrap of cloth embroidered with the image of a bull. You place it on the stone bench like an offering to the gods of patience. You bend to pick up a crumpled towel left beneath a stone bench when a warm, sour, sweet smell of unmistakable warning creeps into your nose. You look up, scan the room. No one's there. Then your eyes drop to a small puddle in the far corner, just beyond the lamp's reach. The color and placement are unambiguous. You're not wearing shoes, just fabric slippers thinner than your morning resolve. And of course, your first step, unthinking, weary, unguarded, goes right into the forbidden zone. It's cold, wet, and invasive. You don't scream. You just stand still for a moment, then quietly step back as if you've just walked into a memory no one should have. You dry the floor, starting with the puddle. Your hands move slowly, not from laziness, but because you're trying to erase the memory. You think about writing a poem called Foot in the Nameless Water, but you abandon the idea, remembering you still have 2 rooms left to clean. In the end, you change slippers. A new pair, still cloth, still flimsy, but at least dry. When you return to the changing room, there's a child not more than 4 sitting atop the stone bench playing with a towel as if it were a toy. His mother is chatting outside, oblivious. You look at the child looks back. Both of you are silent for a beat. Then you nod. No blame, no anger. Just 2 people quietly acknowledging a truth best left unsaid. You continue your work, wiping water trails, straightening the trash bin, clearing crumpled scraps from behind the benches. Sometimes you wonder, why hasn't someone invented personalized robe hooks or a basket with dividers for each guest? But then you remember, this is Rome, a city with arenas, aqueducts, and philosophers, but still no system to keep towels dry in a bathhouse. A while later, you find a pair of trousers, forgotten, curled up behind a bust of Mercury. You pick them up with 2 fingers as though collecting evidence. No one claims them. No one asks. You place them in the lost and found basket, where you found everything from Greek coins, broken combs, to a small knife engraved with the name Claudia. Before leaving the changing room, you glance back at the floor. Dry. Tidy. No odd smells. A tiny moment of peace in a long, damp day. You exhale not from exhaustion, but because for once, there's a place that doesn't need to be wiped again. And you tell yourself, half joking, half true, at least I haven't been slapped today. Though deep down, you know the day still has hours left. And in this world, wet, slippery, and saturated with human scent, anything can happen, no matter how well you clean. You thought today would be just about mopping floors, drying towels, and dodging soldier vomit. But no, a shout rings from the hot room. The water pressure's pathetic, like some old lady's stream. You know that's not a good sign, and you know if someone has to check the pipes, it's you. You're handed an iron hook and oil lamp, and the instruction, climb down there, see what's stuck. No map, no safety rope, no good luck. Just a stone hatch behind the bathhouse, flipped open, revealing a small pit, dark, damp, and smelling like a kitchen storeroom that hasn't been cleaned since 73 BC. You crawl down on your knees, gripping the cold stone edges. The aqueduct water should flow clean, clear, strong, the pride of Roman engineering, as they say. But down here, the stream is wheezing. You inch into the pipe. First water, then mud, then something you don't dare name. Each time you bend, your hair brushes the moist ceiling. Something clings. Could be moss. Could be a cockroach corpse. You're too afraid to check. The oil lamp flickers as if it too doesn't want to be here. You press on. Beneath your hands, the mud is thick and warm, mixed with organic rot. No modern scientist would volunteer to study. You find the blockage, a point where water only drips. Something is stuck. A clump of hair, bits of straw, a scrap of fabric, and something round, something slick. You reach in and gently tug with the hook. Not a rat, not a fish. You decide not to look too closely. Sometimes the smartest thing in this job is not knowing. You hold your breath, shift the blockage aside, and hear the water start to flow again. A deep gurgle sounds like the pipe itself is sighing. You smile, a dry smile in the dark, with mud between your teeth. You turn back, crawling out. Each shuffle squelches beneath your belly, unclear if it's water or something else. When you emerge from the pit, daylight slaps your face like a hand from the sun, God himself. Someone passing by gasps, "Did you just swim in the Tiber?" You don't reply. The Tiber is probably cleaner than where you just were. Your face is smeared. Your hair looks like a storm-hit bird's nest. And the smell, let's just say you made the whole bathhouse pause for a breath. You walk past the caldarium. No one dares speak. One man steps back covering his nose. Another whispers, "That's the one who went into the pipe," as if you're a figure from urban legend. You think about writing a journal today. I touched the bottom of civilization literally. You wash your face under the cold tap, clean crisp, a silent apology from the aqueduct itself. The water flows down your neck carrying mud soot and unspoken things. You catch your reflection in the dull bronze plate, a different version of yourself, older, wetter, and now holding one more secret about what history books never mention. You change robes, dry your hair, and head toward the main room where an old man is complaining that the water is now too hot. You smile, not with surprise, not with bitterness, just a survival reflex. Because once you've crawled through the bowels of Rome, nothing frightens you anymore except another clog tomorrow. You enter the room lined with polished marble tubs, each one heavier than your dream of retiring early. These are the kinds of tubs wealthy Romans adore, not just to soak in, but to flaunt carvings of grapevines, dolphins, and Cupid riding a dove. But you're not here to soak. You're here to crawl inside. Each tub is a masterpiece if you ignore the gray residue oil film, human hairs, and breadcrumbs wedged into the intricate grooves. The more elaborate the carvings, the more secrets they seem to keep. You tie an old cloth around your face to block the smell, grab a sharpened fish bone, your traditional weapon of the trade, and start scraping. A soft scritch escapes each time the bone scrapes away. Buildup formed by time, heat, and apathy. Flecks of white lime. Dust rise like ash clinging to your hair, eyebrows, and lips. Every nasal breath feels like inhaling powdered limestone seasoned with old soap. You shut your eyes and think of somewhere dry, tubless, stain-free, far from here. Suddenly a rich woman walks in. Silk gown, overpowering perfume, and a snow-white towel in hand. She stops when she sees you half submerged in a tub, hair tangled, face ghost white with lime. She recoils, stepping back like you've just crawled out of the sewer, bearing plague. No words, no pity, just elegant avoidance, exactly how aristocrats do it. You lower your head, not out of shame, but because lime dust is falling from your brow. You keep scraping, lips sealed tightly to avoid swallowing soap chips, now as solid as gravel. Sometimes you wonder who thought to carve grape leaves right along the tub's rim, forcing you to hunch for 10 minutes just to clean a tiny grape no one ever notices. A sharp crack. The fishbone snaps in two. You lift your unusually long fingernail and keep scraping, using a tool your own body gifted to the job. It's a strange sensation, like shaving off a layer of Roman history with your bare hand. You glance around. No one sees, no one cares, and there are no medals for sanitation heroes beneath the tubs. By the fourth tub, your head begins to fog. The smell of damp stone, lime water, aged soap, and invisibility swirl into one. Every time you stand, your brain buzzes like it's being steamed in filth, but you keep going because the tub isn't clean, because no one else will do it, and because at least when you're scraping, it feels like you're removing something, even if it's just a thin layer of grime. Once you found a small ring stuck in the drain groove, gold smooth engraved with a name you couldn't read, you held it up to the faint light. No one noticed, no one claimed it. You pocketed it, not for the value, but because so little down here ever has a clear shape. By day's end, your hands are slightly swollen, your back stiff as an unoiled plank, and your face dusted with white like a broke out of work statue of Jupiter. You look back at the row of tubs, clean gleaming, still. No praise, no one notices, but you do. And in that moment, you sit on the stone ledge, inhale a blend of sweat lime and quiet pride, and tell yourself sometimes glory isn't at the top, it's at the bottom. Specifically, the bottom of a tub. An afternoon in a Roman bathhouse has nothing of the poetic afternoon. No golden sunsets, no bird calls, no tea or cakes. Just heat splashing water and the smell of humans soaked into stone. When the sun hits its peak, the bathhouse becomes a kind of bone steam chamber. The air thickens like forgotten stew, constantly simmering, never evaporating. You start to feel lightheaded, not from hunger, but from everything around you. Heat, body oil, running water, the damp rag you've been using since morning, all swirling, like some ancient soup of mildew and mental strain. Every step on the stone floor is a potential slip, a balance test for legs that no longer feel much. Another worker, older balding once nicknamed the floor general, glances at you and says in a ghost story tone, "Someone fainted right there yesterday. Afternoon shift. Cleaning the frigidarium." He points to a faint stain on the floor, a fall mark, or maybe just poor cleaning. You chuckle softly, not because it's funny, but because you know it might be your turn today. You sit on the stone step, trying to relax your shoulders, but only for a few seconds before a voice rings out, not loud, but sharp enough to slice through any hope of rest. Service wipe the frigidarium floor again. Cleaner this time. The last two words slide in like dull knives, not bleeding, but almost enough to make you cry. You stand, legs trembling slightly, chest a bit hollow, but you go not because you're ordered, but because the habit has burrowed into your spine. Returning to the frigidarium a second time feels like re-entering the dream you just tried to escape. The floor's still slick, the guest's still wet, and all you've got is the same rag now older than your patience. You crouch starting at the top step. Every wipe lets cold water seep through cloth into your knees. You shiver not from the cold, but from the mix of moisture and the faint sour musk of oak water and skin. A guest walks past, leaving behind a trail of footprints, half dry, half wet, an apparent contradiction, but true here. You remember you haven't had water all day. You glance up to find a spout and stumble. You don't fall, but your head bumps the stone bench hard enough to see stars. You drop into a crouch, breathing slowly, still clutching the rag as if it were the only reason to stay upright. A drop of water falls onto your hand, unclear from where, cold, sudden, and strangely awakening. A boy watches you, hesitates, and asks, "Are you hurt?" You look at him and smile, a tired but real smile, just a little sleepy. You say, he nods, then runs off. You think at least someone sees you, not as part of the floor, You continue wiping along the pool's edge, every streak, every stain you know by heart. A regular passes by and nods at you. You don't know his name, only that he often forgets his towel. Today he didn't, but he remembered to nod, and that's enough to keep you standing. When the last round is done, you stand in the center of the room, the floor clean light filtering through steam like a melancholy painting. You didn't faint, you didn't collapse, but you know that if someone asked, "Are you okay?" your answer would come in three parts, because you wouldn't have the breath to say it all at once. You return to your corner where the bucket and old rags live. You sit not from fatigue, but because you know another order is coming. The last light of the day slips through a tiny window and lands on your face, the face of someone who's walked through heat, filth, and mildew, and is still sitting. And in that, maybe just maybe, you've won. A little. On a very long day, you sit down on the cold stone step behind the caldarium, your back resting against the mossy wall you scrubbed that very morning. The afternoon sun isn't harsh anymore, but it still pulls sweat from the back of your neck. In your hand is a piece of bread, not the golden, crispy kind from your dreams, but a dense lump of baked dough hard as a small rock and likely older than 3 lunar cycles. You tap it against the stone before taking a bite. The stone makes a sound. The bread doesn't. There's no table, no chair, no tablecloth or silver cutlery. Just you, a cold step, and the sound of your own teeth knocking together each time you try to take the first bite. Your teeth don't hurt, but they feel betrayed, as if you invited them to a meal and instead dragged them into a battle. A tiny crack on the edge of the bread makes you question whether this was ever meant to be food or just a jaw exercise tool. A fly arrives just as you prepare for the second bite. It doesn't fly, it glides as if this is its private performance, circling your ear, sweeping past the bread, and landing gracefully on the rag nearby. You swat. It returns. You swat again. It buzzes unmoved. Maybe it thinks the two of you are sharing lunch. You take a sip of water. It's drawn from a spout, near the boiler, the one nobody ever remembers to check. It's lukewarm metallic, like water collected from an unwashed copper pot. But that's not all. Something slides across your tongue, smooth, soft, and long like a pickled hair. You swallow, then exhale through your nose, trying not to think about what life might exist in Rome's ancient plumbing. You keep eating, not because you're hungry, but out of habit, because you know someone will call soon, and without something in your stomach, you won't have the strength to scrub another tub. You wonder if anyone has ever named a meal like this. Roman. Afternoon. Delight snack for the time-starved and complaint-deprived. Or just chew to survive. Another worker walks by, looks at you, and sits down. No questions, no words, just pulls out a similar chunk of bread. The two of you sit there like half-finished statues resting mid-restoration. Now and then, a crunch echoes dry, brittle, somber. Maybe it's teeth. Maybe it's bread cracking. No one can tell. One. You break off a piece and offer it to the stray cat that always lurks around the dressing room. It sniffs, then walks away. You watch it go, then return to your own bread. You chew on. No blame. No bitterness. Just a quiet sense of understanding. The meal ends when your shadow stretches farther across the stone floor. You're not full, but not starving. It wasn't tasty, but it wasn't the worst thing you've put in your mouth. You stand dust off your hem, a reflex knowing. The dust will be back in 5 minutes. You glance around, then sigh, as if completing some ancient ritual, the ritual of the unnamed. A voice calls from the steam room. You can't make out the words, but you know. No matter who it's for, the one walking will be you. You nod to the worker beside you, leave your dry crust in a corner, like a discarded scroll, and pick up your water bucket. And the fly follows your uninvited companion, impossible to shake. You approach the main bath, the so called heart of the bathhouse, where hundreds soak daily, convinced the water is pure and healing as claimed by bearded healers. You know better. You're the only one who's looked at its bottom with clear eyes and a tattered net. The pool is deep wide and seemingly calm, but that's only an illusion for those who haven't dragged a net across its surface. You drop the net. Within 3 seconds, it surfaces with a miraculous mixture of eras, hair oil film, half dissolved soap cloth, scraps, and surprisingly, a wilted purple flower petal. You wonder if it's the trace of a romantic confession, or just something that fell off a lady's head mid argument with her husband. You keep skimming. Each pull of the net presents a miniature exhibit of history: an earring without an owner, a worn coin, half a broken comb. Occasionally, teeth, some freshly fallen, some yellowed with age, some you don't dare wonder whether they belong to an adult or a child. You collect them all into the unidentified items bucket, labeled with years of trained indifference. Then a careless moment, your hand slips from the edge. Everything slows, like a bad slapstick scene. You flail try to grab the net handle, but it's already betrayed you. It's snapped before and been tied with rope. It gives way instantly, and you fall. Not with the elegance of a single drop, but the full body splash of a stone slab, belly flopping into a marsh. Heads turn. Someone gasps. Someone chuckles. Most clap. You surface hair draped over your face, clutching a stray bath towel that floated by. Someone shouts, "Nice one. Do it again." A snort of laughter cuts through, a small sound, but sharp enough to send your dignity sinking to the bottom. You say nothing. You climb the damp wooden ladder, each step creaking like an exhausted sigh. Water drips from you, not in streams, but in isolated droplets, like your body wants to express each emotion individually. Your shirt clings to your skin, hair tangled in wet clumps, eyes stinging from soap, nose filled with algae and mold. You sit at the edge, not from fatigue, but because you know there's no dry towel waiting for you. You wring out your shirt. Dark water trickles into the stone cracks, carrying away a story no one asked to hear. Someone approaches and asks, "Are you okay?" You nod. You don't want to explain that the only thing hurt is your patience. The thing you thought ran out back in part 12 of the day. Then you rise. You grab the broken net, now just a stub like a toy baton. You skim again, scoop again, because the pool won't clean itself. The water won't purify itself. And someone somewhere will still say, "Why doesn't the water smell nice today?" You don't answer. You just know that today the water has taken in sweat, a little frustration, one fall, and as always, no one cleaned it up, because the cleaner is still in the corner, wringing their shirt where no one looks, wondering if tomorrow maybe they'll learn how to fall more gracefully, just enough to make the applause sting less. You are scrubbing the edge of the pool with a rag torn in 3 places when the main door swings open. A strange breeze, not air, but the scent of power, mixed with rare perfume, rushes in, along with a group of men entering as if they were walking straight into an imperial summit. Leading the procession is an official of the empire dressed in a silk robe with golden trim, face taut like a pigskin, left too long in the sun, holding a scroll so long you think it might be a list of every god in the pantheon. And just as you suspected, though you'd never hope to be right in this situation, it's his list of demands. Each item reads like a riddle meant for someone with no tools, no right to protest, and unfortunately no ability to turn well water into Fiji spring water. The water in the tub must be exactly 36 degrees. No more, no less. You look at your water bucket, then glance at the sky. The sky says nothing. You start running. From the reservoir to the caldarium, from the caldarium to the frigidarium, then out to the backyard to fetch new water. Like a contestant in some ancient Roman version of Who Wants to Be the Best Servant, while you're hurriedly rinsing towels by hand, a light but well aimed kick lands on your side with a voice scolding, "Walk softly. Don't splash water on me." You apologize, not because you were wrong, but because you know things could get worse if you don't. The next towel must be soft as the breath of an Athenian maiden, scentless like early morning fog on Capitoline Hill, and not damp like anything that's ever touched a human. You gather a pile of old towels, musty gray, and begin sorting. None are good. You pick the least offensive one and fold it carefully, as if offering a sacrifice. He sinks into the Bathhouse, drifting like he's pondering new tax policies for the outer provinces, while you stand beside him with a rag in hand like a sweating statue. Occasionally he nods, not at you. Occasionally he frowns, and you're left to guess, is the water too cool? A stray hair floating? Or does he just not like the way you stand? His entourage stands around, offering no help, each radiating a strange kind of energy, the kind that makes you feel like you've done something wrong just by existing. One points to the floor. There's a wet spot. You wipe it. Another points to the towel rack. That towel isn't straight. You fix it. Every motion could be a test. Every exhale might earn criticism for disturbing the sacred silence. Finally, after nearly an hour of soaking, wiping, adjusting, bowing, dodging, apologizing, and wondering why you haven't vanished into the earth, the official rises. He shakes himself off, like a swan fluffing its wings, gets dressed, waves not at you, but at a guard. Just before he leaves, he glances your way and nods. A nod. No thank you, no coin, no gratis. Just a quick nod, maybe because his neck was stiff, but still it's your reward. And like most rewards in your life, it buys you nothing except maybe a sigh softer than the water dripping in the back of the steam room. You linger a bit, not waiting for praise, just unsure which room to clean next. That nod floats in your mind like a faint shadow, part insult, part compliment, mostly meaningless. You smile faintly, return the towel to its place, adjust a fold. Not for him, but for yourself, to preserve a sliver of order in a world never clean enough. Then you walk toward the door. A droplet splashes from the stone floor. You don't dodge it. Not because you're brave, but because you no longer notice it as unusual. You just know he'll probably be back tomorrow, and the list will be longer, and you'll still be here, with your rag, with that nod, and with yourself. You enter the warm bathroom, holding a soaked rag and a water bucket that no longer smells of soap. The space is quieter than usual, just a few scattered guests, dim light, slanting in through high wooden windows, enough to catch the glisten of water trails, but not enough to see faces. You kneel to wipe each stone tile eyes, following bare feet, stepping across the floor, like blurred footprints of untold stories. Then you see him, the man sitting quietly by the edge of the pool, feet soaking in gently steaming water, posture upright and calm, like he's reviewing some important decree in his mind. A dark linen robe, a scroll already unrolled in his hand, eyes on no one, but you're looking, closely, disbelievingly. It's Quintus, the man who taught you how to write Latin when you were small, when your hands could barely reach the desk. Your heart skips a beat, then another. You pause, tempted to say, Master, but he doesn't look. Or maybe he looks and pretends not to. Or maybe he truly doesn't recognize you no longer. The boy reciting aloud, but a floor scrubbing man, hair a mess, back bent hands, cracked from lime water. You crouch to clean near his spot. He lifts his feet slightly, not a word, just a small educated gesture, but clear. As if you were the dirty water he wants to avoid, not the student who once wrote alphabets with a reed pen under oil lamplight. You feel your eyes sting. Maybe it's the steam. Maybe it's something else. You almost say, I used to have the best handwriting in class. Do you remember? But you don't, because in that moment, you are not a child waiting for praise. You are the floor cleaner. And floor cleaners don't interrupt the sacred space of guests, so you wipe more gently, slower, carefully gliding around his toes, careful not to splash. Every movement is a word unspoken, as if rewriting an old letter with a rag on cold stone. He says nothing, still reading, still unmoved. You shift to the next tile, quiet as breath. A draft through the door makes you shiver, but you keep going. You wonder if your roles were reversed, if you were the one soaking and he the one scrubbing. What would you do? Maybe you'd smile. Maybe you'd call his name. Maybe not. You never know when dignity wears thin and silence becomes softer than speech. You finish cleaning around him, then step back. Just as he rolls up his scroll, rises and walks toward the changing room. His robe brushes past your shoulder like a faint breeze. No glance, no goodbye, no gratus, just a step, a soak, a reunion. You remain standing, rag in hand, eyes on the stone floor now dry, nothing left to wipe, yet you run your hand once more, as if cleaning away memory, not of the teacher, but of yourself, the boy who once believed good penmanship could change his life. Then you walk away, not angry, not sad, just cold. And in that chill, you think, he'll probably return tomorrow, and so will you. Not to meet again, but to keep cleaning, as a habit, as a story unfinished. And you perhaps are still the one holding the pen, but instead of ink, you use water. Instead of paper, stone. And instead of being remembered, you're forgotten thoroughly gently, like a spotless wipe. You bend down and slip through the narrow door leading into the hypocostum chamber, a place not meant for anyone who enjoys breathing easily or keeping their nose hairs intact. Down here, beneath the stone floor, where guests soak and unwind, is the upside down world, not cool, not damp, but dry and blazing, like Vulcan's throat mid-sneeze. The heat hits your face like a slap, with a towel soaked in boiling oil. You crawl in hunching to avoid half-burned wooden beams and stacked clay bricks that prop up the sweat oven. The ceiling is so low you have to crawl. Your forehead bangs against it from breathing too hard. The air here isn't for inhaling, it's just to remind you you're still alive. You find the main vent, the one you were told to check for blockage, which means sticking your face into a hole that may have hosted rats, stray cats, or something once alive just an hour ago. When you reach in a burst of ash and dust shoots out into your eyes, your mouth, your memory. You cough. But down here, coughing doesn't sound like coughing. It sounds like wood cracking. You pause, hands braced on a glowing red brick beneath you, and feel a wave of heat crawl up your spine. Not metaphorically, actually. You hear your hair sizzle. A small part of you thinks, great, saves me a haircut. Another part just shuts your eyes because opening them shows you nothing, just swirling dust clouds. Your eyes sting like they've been rinsed with lye soap. At some point, you think 5 more minutes in here, and I'll be a traditional Roman roast. But then something strange happens, a sense of peace. No one calls, no one demands, no one asks, where's the towel? Is the water cold again? Why is the floor this slippery? Here there's just you and the fire, and the steady crackle of burning coals, rhythmic, raw, and oddly sincere. You sit down back against a brick pillar. It burns, but it's quiet. You imagine yourself as another brick fired placed here, long forgotten. And then you smile a small, smoky, cracked lip smile. Because in this furnace room, you might be the only one not pretending. No clean towels, no critical glances, no dropped coins out of pity. Just you. And the gentle fall of ash settling like gray snow. You reach up, touch your face, feel the fine dust, clinging like flour. The smell of burning of heat of a day winding down. You rise, hunch again, and crawl out. Each step a small farewell to the heat. Every smudge on your tunic, proof you were here. When you reach the door, the hallway air still damp and foul feels like the freshest breeze you've ever known. You inhale deeply like someone just escaped the belly of a beast. Behind you the fire still glows. No one needs you there anymore. And strangely you feel a pang of regret. Because in the hippocastum, you didn't serve anyone. It was just you, your job, and a silence that felt like an unspoken thank you. A place where no one calls your name, but also where no one forgets you exist. You find a final quiet corner in the frigidarium where light doesn't reach and even noise seems reluctant to visit. There's just one old stone pillar, a few puddles on the floor, and air so cold it feels like stepping inside a jar of pickled fish. But it's the most peaceful place you've had all day. You sit down back against the stone, a chill crawling from your tailbone up your spine, making you curl like a wet cat. But you don't care. Your body is soaked, rag still in hand, feet heavy as bricks, and your head begins to nod like an unlocked door swinging in the breeze. Just 5 minutes, you whisper to yourself, just 5. You close your eyes, no pillow, no gentle music, just the smell of damp stone, the uneven drip of cold water from the leaking roof, and your heart beats slow, heavy as if defying Roman gravity. It's not really sleep, more like floating. You don't dream, you just drift, then crash. A shatter like lightning through your forehead. You jerk up like a soldier summoned mid-battle, head spinning, feet numb, eyes not yet ready for light. A second later comes the call, service. The manager's voice, dry, sharp, unmistakable. You rise, each vertebra crackling like someone testing if your spine still works. You grab the rag. Your legs don't feel like yours. You follow the sound down the corridor to the scene of the crash. A large ceramic jar of bath oil, once proudly perched on a shelf, now shattered on the stone floor like your self-worth. The manager looks at you as if you were the one who knocked it over. You say nothing, not because you're guilty, but because explanations aren't on the menu today. You kneel, start picking up the shards, hands trembling, from cold fatigue, or simply having nothing left to hold on to. Each piece is a memory, one sharp as a guest's glare when the water's too cold, one curved like your spine after a day hunched over, and one so thin it keeps slipping from your grasp. The oil has pooled across the floor. Its jasmine, cinnamon, and lemon scent thicken the air. The smell of a class you're allowed to inhale, never touch. You gather everything quietly, patting your hands to avoid cuts. A guest passes, frowning at the smell. A child stares and whispers, "What are you doing?" You smile a twisted thing and keep going. No one pats your back. No one says, "Be careful." Just cold stone, slippery oil, and you the only one with no excuse for being tired. When it's done, you rinse your hands in cold water, dry them with a cloth that gave up being dry hours ago. You look up through a roof crack. No sun, just gray clouds, and the kind of faint light that passes for hope at day's end. You don't sit. You know that if you sit, you'll close your eyes again. And if you do, who knows if the next jar will survive? You keep going. Not fast, not slow, just enough to avoid hearing your name again. And deep inside, you whisper it again. Just 5 more minutes. But life, as it has proven many times, never has the time to spare. You push open the heavy wooden door into the steam room, a place so thick with air that even if you held your hand in front of your face, you wouldn't be sure your fingers were still attached. The steam here isn't the gentle spa kind. It's the kind that tangles your hair, seeps into your bones, and steals your sense of direction in under 5 steps. You step in, broom in hand, wearing a pair of cloth sandals that are limping toward their final breath. The soles are as soft as day-old steamed bread, and the straps hang looser than your willpower at the end of a shift. You walk carefully, like a tightrope artist on a slippery stage, with no safety net, only consequences. The stone floor hisses with steam like a sleeping dragon every step, letting out the squish of sweat vapor and regret. An old man sits in the middle of the room, body wrapped in a towel wool hat on his head, hands resting on knees like he's deep in some sacred ritual. He opens his eyes just as you slip quietly past behind him and murmurs, "Careful, I'm meditating." You stop, nod, and tiptoe like a cat across gravel, trying not to let your broom betray you with even a whisper. You bend down to wipe the floor behind him, eyes still not adjusted to the dim light and dense fog. Your hand meets each wet, slimy, warm tile, a kind of damp that reminds you of mold moss and every organism you hope never shows up at dinner. Then shift. A sound cuts through the mist, not loud but clear, undeniable. You freeze. The room seems to pause, except for whatever just diffused into the air. Every sense in your body screams, "Breathe less." But you have to keep working. Clean the floor. Clean around the source of the sound. No questions. No reactions. Just wipe softly like you're erasing memory. A sentence flashes in your mind. In this place, dignity vanishes as fast as steam. You once thought this job would toughen you, but no one teaches you how to handle surprise gases. You're not angry, just a little sad, because you know whoever releases it forgets, but the one who wipes remembers forever. You move on to the far corner of the room where the tiles are uneven and puddles form some mixture of oil, sweat, and something you refuse to name. The broom whispers, "Swish, swish," as if it too is trying not to disturb someone's meditation. You clean like a ghost. No one sees you. No one stops you. Another guest enters and slips instantly at the doorway, letting out a short yelp. No one turns around. In this room, everything's so slick, even reflexes slide out of reach. You help him up. He thanks you with a distracted nod and disappears into the fog. You hold your broom, breathing softly, unsure if you're cleaning the room or cleaning yourself. As you finish the last section of the floor, you slowly back toward the door. Your hands are wrinkled, your hair clings to your skin, and your uniform is as soaked as if you'd bathed, just not in a way anyone would envy. You open the door, and steam rushes out like an angry cloud, carrying with it your final sigh of the day. You leave the room. No one sees you off. No one remembers you entered. But you remember. Because in under an hour, you've slipped, inhaled things no one should, and learned an old lesson again. In a Roman steam room, everything is slippery, the floor dignity, and your ability to stay calm, and you once again are still standing, or at least not quite fallen. You crouch to clean the ash from the furnace behind the hypocaustum, a job most avoid except you. Cold ash cakes the floor gray and white like accidental makeup smeared across a long day. Every shovel sends a puff of fine dust into your face neck, and places you'd rather not know are also dusty. As you scrape a stubborn patch, a clatter echoes behind the brick wall. At first you think it's just a stone falling, but the noise continues rhythmic pace, almost like conversation, a meeting. You pause, lean closer. It's not your imagination. You hear a soft hiss, then faint footsteps, precise, repeating. You lift the loose plank that blocks an old passageway. A shadowed space appears. In the flickering glow of embers, you see a pair of eyes. Then two, then a whole row glinting like black beads in the dark. A rat as big as your forearm peeks out. It doesn't run, it just stares, calm, judging. You feel like you've interrupted a board meeting. The rat sniffs the air as if checking your credentials. You clear your throat, stoke the fire. The flame jumps. Light flickers across gray fur. One runs. Then the others scatter, not in panic, but with purpose. Like a formal retreat, you sigh. Not because they're gone, but because you no longer have to share your workspace with a council of rodents. Then you look around, ash old straw, discarded rags, the damp stink of mold and grime, and realize this isn't a place where worker and vermin are easily told apart. You and the rats are just tenants in the hot, damp belly of a grand monument where cleanliness is a luxury, and fear has worn thin over time. You get back to work. Every scoop of ash brings back something that time you got a mild burn, that time you were locked in for forgetting the woodroom key, that time you found a dried up snake corpse in a pile of old soot. Now add one more, the rodent meeting. You think maybe you'll tell someone about it. But who? You keep scooping thinking about the biggest rat. Does it have a name? A title chief of straw supplies you imagine? Then chuckle quietly to yourself. Ash clings to your lips. The laugh doesn't travel far. Only you hear it. And maybe one rat behind a vent listening too. You stack the firewood again, close the hatch, hide the evidence. On the outside, this is just a maintenance nook of a public bath. But you know deeper in, it's a whole underground world. A furry parliament more efficient than you'll ever be. As you stand back aching, like always, you wonder if there's a next life. Will you come back as a person or a rat? At least rats don't clean ash, don't mop oil, don't apologize for things they didn't do. You carry the ash shovel out, leaving behind a room half burned, half secret. Another day nearly done, and you the only one who knows that behind the wall a very important law may have just passed. From now on, no humans allowed during nap time. You had just set down the ash shovel when a sharp shout echoed from the stone hallway. Caldarium, someone yelled. No further explanation needed. You took off, running through the frigidarium, down the steam filled corridor where the scent of poached human skin still hung in the air. Your gut told you this wasn't one of the usual slip and falls. When you arrived, it looked like a small disaster. Painting, a large man, the kind who really shouldn't fall, but always does, was sprawled face down across the hot stone floor. Water splashed everywhere. His towel had shifted to barely maintain the minimum standard of decency. You froze for a second. Every eye in the room turned to you. No one spoke, but their expressions were identical. Probably his fault. As if your secret morning routine included drizzling olive oil across the tiles and waiting for the roundest victim to maximize effect. You rushed over. Avoiding the stairs, you navigated around wet legs and knelt beside the man. Sir, are you all right? You asked, offering a towel, keeping your voice calm, even though your mind was looping a very old Latin curse. He rolled over like an overturned turtle, slow, heavy, with a wet groan. You helped him up, patting his hands dry. The floor was still slippery, you knew that, but you crouched and wiped it anyway, as fast as possible, because he was looking at you, like you were not only responsible for this fall, but for every personal failure he'd ever had. No cleaner knows how to clean, he shouted, clear, loud, unflinching, short enough for everyone in the room to hear. A young man near the hot tub stifled a laugh, but you saw his shoulders bounce. He'd probably be quoting that line for the next week. You smiled softly, just enough not to seem rude, not enough to shatter into tears. You nodded, as if you agreed, as if you'd taken a course called How to Accept Criticism like a used rag. Then you turned, walked slowly, steadily, your mop handle clutched like a sword, not to strike, but to keep your composure from slipping through your fingers. Every step across the hot floor felt like dragging yourself out of emotional sludge. You knew you weren't at fault, but who cared in a place like this? You mopped the scene again, this time more thoroughly than necessary, not out of fear of being scolded, but because somewhere deep down, you still wanted to preserve something intact, kindness, even if it was just in how you kept your rag from touching the ground or how you cleaned every splash without kicking a single drop. As you left the room, you glanced once more at the man. He was seated, rewrapping his towel, chatting with a friend as if he'd never fallen, as if he'd never called someone incapable of cleaning. You didn't hold it against him. Maybe to him, you had no name, no face, just part of the stone floor, something that got silently wiped down every day, and no one questioned why it always stayed clean. You returned to the linen storeroom, washed the towels, wrung them out. The squelch of twisting fabric sounded like breathing. The day wasn't over, but you'd survived another trial, not by force, but by quiet resilience, like an old mop, never praised, always needed. The afternoon sun sank slowly, as if it too were tired, slipping through narrow windows, casting dappled light across the cold stone floor of the bathhouse. The leftover puddles shimmered like warped mirrors, not reflecting your face, but bare footprints, streaks of oil still waiting to be cleaned, and a few drops of something you'd rather not name. You looked toward the main entrance. People streamed in like a collective ritual of the Empire merchants, soldiers, scribes, prostitutes, priests, all sweating, all needing hot water, and all seeing you as a ghost on their way through. The smell of people now became unmistakable. Not just sweat, but personality and odor, some heavy with jasmine oil, some like they'd rolled through a crate of dried fish, some clearly unable to tell perfume from cooking grease. You took a breath of familiar mistake. The air was as thick as thin soup in part smoke, part body, steam, and part something you couldn't identify but definitely didn't belong in your lungs. You exhaled slowly, smoothed your tunic, and stepped toward the tepidarium hallway. Evening shift had officially begun. The guests multiplied, each one a small battlefield, and you were the cleanup crew. One stepped out of the pool, leaving a watery trail from knee to ankle. Another stepped in, hit that same puddle, slipped slightly, then snapped. The floor's too slick. You nodded, apologized, bent to clean as if you were the reason gravity exists. And then a rare moment, you saw a young woman smiling at you from the corridor. Bright eyes, tied back, hair small, bucket in hand. You almost fumbled, your face warming, despite standing in the frigidarium. Then you realized she was the new cleaner. Started last week. Wore the same worn linen. Got scolded at least twice a day. Still smiled. You nodded back. A small gesture barely visible. In a place this damp, slippery, and heavy, with the smell of old soap, that smile was the cleanest thing you'd seen all day. Not because it was pretty, but because it hadn't worn out. Not yet. You kept mopping. The caldarium corner was now packed. Steam rose. Oil lamps flickered along the walls. You saw your shadow. Faint, warped mop. In hand, like a weapon. You weren't a warrior, but you were still here. Mopping, collecting towels, pulling hair from drains, listening to conversations never meant for you. A noble complained about dinner. A young couple argued over a dog's name. An old man recounted stories from the war. You heard it all, remembered some, stored them like shards of a life that didn't belong to you. Outside, the sky was turning purple. The oil lamps began to tremble with the draft. The whole bathhouse seemed to breathe, swelling with voices collapsing with splashes. You knew that, in just a few hours, you'd be scrubbing every room, wringing towels, replacing water, pushing the wooden cart back to the linen store. But right now, you just mopped. Mopped and stood among the crowd like a wall that breathes. You glanced to the left. The young woman was crouching to scrub the floor, sweat down her cheekcloth, in hand, the same way you used to hold yours. She looked up at you, smiled. You smiled back. In the warm orange glow, you weren't sure who smiled. First you, or the thought that despite the filth, despite the fatigue maybe, you were still human. And that this brief sunset, short as it was, had its own way of making you stay a little longer before the darkness fell, and the work carried on without needing to call your name. You returned to the center of the bathhouse, the main stage for public scrubbing sessions, only to find the floor flooded with foam up to your ankles. Every kind of foam imaginable, wispy like smoke, thick like cream, bubbles the size of coins and tiny suds that cling to your legs, like they've been emotionally attached for years. All of it stemming from soap made with sheep fat, the kind of smell that can ruin your appetite for grilled meat for at least a week. The bathers, of course, are unbothered. They scrub their backs, scratch their arms, lather their hair, smear it down their legs, then let it all spill across the floor like a ritualistic soap sacrifice. A large man steps out of the pool, his arms still covered in foam, and gives a mighty shake, sending suds flying into your face. You nod a thank you, then wipe your face with the hem of your tunic, now a glorious blend of sweat-dirty water and half the chemical inventory of ancient Rome. You start cleaning. For real this time. The mop spins in your hands like an old warrior battling a wave of bubbles. But you know the truth. This isn't just wet, it's slick. Slick like New Year's resolutions. Slick like your belief that this job might be okay. Every step is a wager against fate. And then it happens as it always does. You move a little too quickly around the corner of the caldarium where the light doesn't reach, and the foam hangs thick like a milk cloud. A soft thud rings out, not loud, but deafening to your pride. You fall. Sprawled out limbs wide like you're trying to make a snow angel in soap, you hear giggles from the corner. Not cruel, but enough to turn your face hotter than the soak basin. You brace yourself. Sit up. Foam clings to your nose. Hair stuck to your forehead. A stray hair from someone else dangling off your chin. You sigh, then whisper like you're reciting a sad fairy tale. This foam isn't cute. No one hears. No one needs to. Because right then, you're not speaking to anyone but yourself, the one who's spent all day trying to clean what everyone else keeps dirtying. You stand, wipe yourself down, and resume sweeping. The foam's still there, not less, just wider. Like everything else in a floor cleaner's life, never gone, just moved from one room to another. A woman walks by, slips slightly, but catches her balance. She turns back, winks at you. The floor's so clean, it's suspicious. You smile, say nothing. It's the first compliment of the day. Maybe the last. You tuck it away, like a small pebble in your pocket. Not to use, just to remember it's still there. You keep mopping. Each spin of the mop feels like the heartbeat of this ancient bathhouse, slow, damp, steady, and unnoticed. The oil lamp's reflection ripples across the floor, shiny in clean spots, dull where it's not, and spellbound where the foam still reigns. Night is near. The foam will fade. The people will leave. Only you will remain, and the stone floor slipperier than any path you've ever walked. But still you mop, because someone has to. And tonight, once again, that someone is you. You push open the massage room door, a small wooden one always cracked open and exuding a scent somewhere between Greek salad and a second-rate perfume shop. In the dim light, the room feels like a dream for lovers of soft skin and glossy oils, low lamps, linen sheets, and an aroma so intoxicating it almost makes you forget how tired you are until you look at the floor. A large towel soaked through lies like a fat cat that's just rolled through a bowl of olive soup. Under the lamp, it gleams so slick, you can see the reflection of your shoe's tip. You lift it 2 fingers, only like it might fight back, but the oil's sunk deep. The fabric is limp sticky, and as heavy as someone's entire monthly wage. You toss it into the laundry bucket and turn back to the floor. Footprints, not water oil. Perfect outlines, neat and deliberate as if someone decided to sign their name by walking across expensive olive sludge. You grab a rag. Start scrubbing. Again and again. It doesn't fade, just spreads an abstract painting no one asked for. Your hand is so slippery the mop almost flies across the room. You steady yourself, thinking, at least there's no fire here. Then you glance at the flickering oil lamp in the corner and quickly take that thought back. In a room full of essential oils and dirty linens, one spark could turn everything into a Roman barbecue. You switch to a dry cloth. After finishing the floor, you move to the massage stone where clients lie. There's hair, long hair, short hair curly broken. No one can explain how one massage results in enough shedding to stuff a pillow. You gather it all, wrap it tight in a towel like a sealed secret. In the corner is a basket of used but not discarded towels. You pull them out one by one, sorting by smell and gut instinct. Slightly damp, set aside, smells like fish grease. Straight to the wash bin. Some are impossible to classify, lavender or foot fungus. You stop asking. No one's answering. You kneel for one last wipe. A weird circular stain on the wall. Scrub lightly, then harder. Another smear emerges, not oil, but lipstick maybe. You sigh. This room has too many stories, but none of them are yours. Finished. You stand. Wipe your hands on your pants. Your third mistake in 10 minutes, because your hands are slick and your pants are slick too. You nearly slip as you turn toward the door. You pause. Look back. The light's soft. The floor is clean. The towels are folded. It almost looks trustworthy, at least for the next 15 minutes. You close the door gently. The hinge groans a long sigh like your own. Your back aches. Your hands sting and your mind feels as greasy as the floor. But you walk on. Because there's another room, another guest. More oily footprints waiting to be wiped away before they vanish into the Roman night. And tonight, once again, that someone is still you. You step into the lounge, a place meant for relaxation, quiet conversation, and the gentle enjoyment of grapes and philosophy. But to you, it's the fourth battlefield of the day, right after the caldarium floor, the scorched water pot, and the massage room you barely escape. The air here feels different. No steam, no soap bubbles, but there's trash. Dry trash, crumbly trash, and the kind of trash that makes you question whether you should sweep it, scoop it, or offer it up in a small ceremony. On the table, you spot grape skins crushed like the heart of someone, freshly dumped breadcrumbs scattered like it was the site of a festive snack parade, and a lone sandal, right foot small, size pale pink. You glance around. No one seems to be looking for it. After a moment's thought, you drop it into the lost and found basket, which by now contains enough items to open a second-hand shop. In the corner, a child is playing with a bottle of perfume. Before you can say anything, it slips, shatters. The oil spreads across the floor, sweet enough to make you feel like you're standing in the middle of a honey-glazed waffle baked inside a durian oven. You crouch down to wipe it up the rag, skimming over the slick layer. Every stroke brings a new wave of scent, cinnamon, orange jasmine, and something eerily similar to failed mouthwash. Your nose starts protesting. You cough. Once, then twice, then a flurry, as if you're about to summon the sneeze god of some forgotten Roman pantheon. Right then, a wealthy woman enters, white robe hair, pinned high feathered fan in hand. She wrinkles her nose, sniffs the air, and asks, "What is that smell?" Before you can respond, she continues, "Did someone spill holy water?" You look at her and smile wearily. "A touch of class, ma'am." She nods. Whether in agreement or confusion, you're not sure. Either way, she moves on without pressing. You continue wiping now, breathing through your mouth. A mistake because now, the cinnamon seems to slide down your throat like drinking a cup of perfume spiked with table salt. You gather towels, straighten chairs, smooth out the wrinkled tablecloth. In the corner sits a bowl of wilted fruit. You pick up each piece, sorting them by softness and suspicion. One grape is so squishy, you're not sure it's still a grape. A male guest enters, leaves his outer robe, and says, "I'll be right back." You nod. 30 minutes later, still no sign of him. You hang the robe on a hook, wondering if anyone ever really comes back after leaving a room that smells like a wholesale perfume stall. You pass the large mirror at the front of the room. It's fogged, reflecting a blurry version of yourself, messy hair, slumped shoulders, a tunic blotched with moisture, eyes slightly shadowed. You don't look like staff. You don't look like a guest either. You look like part of the bathhouse, like an old rag returned to its rightful place. You finish wiping a corner, pick up a piece of bread, then stand up and take a deep breath. The lounge, such a soft name, such a misleading feeling. It's like a promise never kept. Lounge is a word reserved for guests. For you, it's just another square in the endless grid of things to clean. And you keep moving because there's still the next room, still another mess, still more questions like, what's that smell? Waiting to be answered with a tired smile and a simple phrase, a touch of class, ma'am. You step into the tepidarium as night has fully fallen, the oil lamp light dimming like the final breath of the day. The room is still warm, still damp, but now empty. No more guests, no more fresh perfume, just you, the mop, and a sigh from somewhere maybe your own. Each footstep echoes off the stone floor. You hear the slow drip of water from a leaky brass faucet, steady rhythm, unhurried, as if time itself gets lazy in the bathhouse. You begin wiping down the stone steps, ones that have borne hundreds of wet feet daily, now lying still like they've dozed off. The bench is still faintly warm, holding the ghost of someone who just left. You run your cloth along it, your hand grazing a sticky patch. You don't look closely, just clean it. In the corner, something peeks out from under the bench. A pair of old socks rolled tight, damp, and once white maybe. You pick them up and toss them in the laundry. The cold of the fabric seeps through your fingers and into your spine. At the soaking pool, you spot something odd floating at the edge. Half a fig crushed open, its inside splayed like the scene of a culinary crime. Nearby, a few hairs are tangled together, like a love letter sent to the wrong person. You fish them out with a net. With your bare hand, really, because gloves, you've never had those. A soft breeze sneaks in through the back door, rustling the thin curtain. You flinch, then exhale. Sounds carry weight. Now, the scratch of a mouse behind the wall, a cough from another room, the sound of your head bumping the edge of a bench from bending too low. Not pain exactly, just confirmation you're still alive. And still cleaning. You sit on one of the stone steps once used by a high ranking official who once complained the water wasn't the ideal temperature. Now it's you sitting there, rag in hand, clothes, damp hair clinging lightly to your scalp and your back, aching like someone laid a brick across your spine. But in that moment, you realize everything's gone quiet. No more yelling, no more calls for fresh towels, no more service or grumbles about unclean spots. Just the sound of water, the sound of wiping, the soft scuffle of your feet, like the slow dance of an invisible job. Peaceful, in the most unexpected sense. You look up. The ceiling is stone with a crack shaped like a finger. It looks like ancient Rome is hiding some secret. You whisper, "Thanks for not collapsing." No reply. That's fine. You don't need conversation, just a bit of silence after a day full of noisy service. As you stand, you glance around one last time. The bathhouse, once chaotic, now sacred, feels like a tired temple. Each stone a page of history, each droplet left behind a memory not yet dry. You don't belong here, but you're the one keeping it going. Quietly, invisibly, patiently. And as you step out, rag still, in hand, your heart feels lighter, like you just washed away something not from the floor, but from deep inside yourself. Sometimes the most peaceful thing isn't rest. It's having just enough energy for one last task, and just enough stillness to hear yourself breathe. You crouch down and scoop up handfuls of ash from beneath the furnace. The ash is gray, dry, and fine, but full of tiny soot particles that cling to your arms, slip into your sleeves, sneak down your collar. At times, it feels like you're scraping pieces of yourself, gathering up the remnants of a day that has smoldered quietly since morning. The hypocaust furnaces are now cold, but heat still lingers in the stones as if someone had left bits of sunlight inside every brick. In the corner of the room, you see small bronze candle holders with wax spilled across the floor. The hardened wax has formed curved streaks like stubborn teardrops. Some candles have long gone out, yet their wicks still smolder faintly. You wave your hand, the smoke drifts lazily, like the final breath of a forgotten ceremony. The scent of scorched air and burnt wax hangs at your nose, not harsh, but enough to remind you that the night still hasn't released you. Your hands are now black, as if you've been blacksmithing rather than cleaning. Your fingernails are caked with wax solid chunks that stick like memories refusing to fade. You try scraping it off with the stub of a broken handled brush, then give up. Some things cling for so long they just become part of you. You glance at your palms. The wax flakes like a second skin, tired, dusty, but still functioning. A coworker passes by. His name is Gaius. You're not close, but close enough to know his pat on your shoulder is a kind of comfort. No words, no questions, just a quiet pat. Then he moves on as if to say, as long as you're alive, there's more to clean. You nod without replying. His footsteps fade into the distance, blending with the sound of wind sneaking through the cracked bricks behind the caldarium. You return to collecting the last of the ash, then wipe down the stone floor where the wax has hardened into stubborn streaks. In some spots, you use your fingernails to scrape. It makes a small click, like a slow clock, ticking off the seconds of a day that's already stretched longer than a lifetime. Sometimes you pause for a few seconds, glancing up at the small flame still flickering in the corner, a lone oil wick no one has put out. The flame sways in the breeze, casting a faint yellow light on walls stained with drying mop marks. You step over and extinguish it with two fingers, gently like closing an old book. But inside you, the flame still glows, a strange kind of light, weary, stubborn, and determined to exist, even when no one is watching. You stand up. Your back aches, but your legs still move. The last corner of the room remains untouched, the one guests rarely visit, though the dust always finds its way there. You head in that direction, dragging the bucket, the mop, and your own elongated shadow beneath the trembling light of dying candles. Night is sinking deep, but you still have work, because in this world where light is used, then forgotten, someone always has to gather the ashes, wipe the wax, and make sure what once blazed bright doesn't rot into ruin. That someone tonight, as always, is you. You hear the argument the moment you step out of the rag storage closet. Two men, both in their 50s, wet-haired and round-bellied, are pointing fingers and nearly coming to blows over a towel. A towel, just a worn piece of linen, now elevated to the status of sacred artifact that neither will yield. It's mine. I left it here. This morning. The man on the left yells, brandishing a wooden sandal like a wartime weapon. No, I used it after the steam room. The other snaps, his voice slicing through clenched teeth, palm slapping the stone bench as if to stake a claim. You're caught in the middle. One hand holding a mop, the other gripping a water bucket stomach, reminding you of dinner mist and your back screaming from the morning shift. You smile the kind of smile that Anyone who's worked service will recognize. Not friendly, not exactly patient, but designed for survival. Then one man makes a grand gesture and knocks over your bucket. Water splashes across the freshly cleaned stone floor, dragging a few leftover streaks of soap with it. You watch it all unfold like a replay from the morning, the same bucket, the same water, the same accidental tide. You say nothing. No need. Any word, even sorry, could be taken as favoritism. Instead, you step back, take a breath, and begin wiping it up again, like performing a ritual no one loves, but everyone relies on. Each swipe of the mop is accompanied by the silent question: why do towels start so many wars? Eventually, the two men cool off and walk away in opposite directions. The towel in question remains wet, wrinkled, and smelling mostly of defeat. You stare at it for a moment, then, without a word, you pick it up and head for the furnace corner, too hot and too pungent for most people to linger near. You stuff the towel between two stones, not too deep, just enough for it to disappear from the lives of those two men. You tell yourself, that's done. But in your heart, you know tomorrow there will be another towel, another quarrel, and you'll still be the one cleaning up the spilled anger that never belonged to you. You return to your mop picking up where no one keeps score. Every stain, every spat, every overturned bucket becomes a note in the strange symphony titled A Day in a Roman Public Bath. And you are the silent musician scrubbing away the mistakes with the patience of someone who knows peace sometimes lies in hiding a towel well. You finish wiping down the last step just as the sky turns indigo. The soft orange yellow glow of scattered oil lamps along the wall no longer holds back the dark. Most of the guests have gone. The noise has faded, replaced by a strange kind of stillness. But you know, well, quiet doesn't mean the work is done. From the corner of the corridor, behind the frigidarium, you see something dart past. Not a person, not the wind. A stray cat, scruffy, fur eyes glowing like twin embers. It hops onto a stone bench, usually reserved for distinguished patrons. Then it begins to lick its paw, as if ascending the throne. You exhale and walk toward it, mop still damp in hand. Shoo, you murmur, waving gently, hoping the cat speaks human. It glances at you, unafraid, unbothered, then jumps down with the nonchalance of a proper Roman, as if it too had rights here, maybe even seniority. Before you finish that breath, another one crawls out of the towel cubby. Not crawls, oozes like a breathing dust ball. It stares at you unblinking with a look that's half challenge, half philosophy. You stare back and think, at least you're not yelling at me about a missed spot. You bend down and start picking up strands of cat hair from the floor. They stick to the damp stone like they intend to stay forever. A few cling to your hand, float briefly, then settle again like summer snow. You smile faintly. Cats get petted. Cleaners get scolded. Power dynamics are weird. In the distance out by the back courtyard, where the large water jars sit, you hear an owl. A single hoot hoarse, tired as if it too is worn out from the night shift. You glance that way, then shake your head. Not my shift, you whisper, and return to your task. The caldarium now holds only the flicker of a single small lamp. In the blurred shadows, you see your own form stretched across the stone floor, a hunched figure, mop in hand, walking slowly like a ghost in a still living museum. Another cat crosses your path. It doesn't look at you, doesn't flinch, just walks on like you're invisible. You watch it pass, then bend down to collect some dropped towels, some covered in cat hair, some with Something else. Unidentifiable. You don't ask anymore. Doesn't matter. By day there are guests, by night there are cats, and always there is you, a mop and a bucket. You continue down the cold stone hallway, your soft cloth slippers making a slapping sound like a lonely drumbeat. Ahead is the last room still untouched. A small cat is curled in the corner, asleep, like a noble who's just had an oil massage. You pause. You don't have the heart to wake it, so you turn away, back toward the rag pile, where reality always beats imagination, and you're always the one gathering what's left behind after a day or a lifetime. Night falls. The cats sleep. The cleaner is still not done. And tomorrow it may start with the sound of claws on a water basin and your own quiet sigh. But for tonight, at least there is one small corner you don't have to clean because a cat is guarding the dream. You begin the final task on a to-do list as long as a roll of bathhouse linen, cleaning statues. They're everywhere from the entryway to the center of the caldarium, from beside the plunge pools to the steam room door. The Roman gods, muscular, majestic, holding thunderbolts, bows, and towels. The statue of Jupiter towers beside the hot pool, each muscle carved with deliberate precision, but divine. Not so much. Dust oil cat fur and what appears to be raisin juice coat his hand. You grab a cloth, dip it in water, and start scrubbing like you're polishing a scratch off an old cart. Only the cart doesn't stare back with judgment. You wipe until your neck aches. Stretching to reach his right shoulder, you suddenly notice something twitching inside Venus's left ear. A bug. Not large, but enough to jolt you nearly off your stool. You inhale deeply, exhale gently, and swipe it out, with your cloth half out of reverence, half out of unease. Not for the bug, for the goddess. Mercury has his winged helmet and an expression that suggests he's about to complain about the towel quality. You meet his gaze and murmur, "You know I've cleaned 6 other statues before you, right?" Then resume slowly, methodically like a craftsman from antiquity, underpaid and underthanked. The oils from daily touch have discolored the marble in places. Some statues even have lipstick marks, origin unknown. You don't ask. But when you get to Bacchus's lips, you wonder, has anyone ever cleaned a statue's mouth and felt deceived? You sigh, then move on to the thigh. Each statue is a test of patience. Not because it's hard, because it never responds. You scrub and scrub again and scrub some more, but no god nods. No one says thank you, and your wishes remain firmly ungranted. They just stand there, stone still, cold as the frigidarium tiles. An old woman once told you, cleaning statues brings luck. You heard that your first year. It's been 12. You're still waiting. Waiting for something, maybe a day off, a slice of cake, or just a thank you that isn't whispered. You reach the final statue, Neptune trident in hand, foot on a stone wave. You sit down, lean against his pedestal, and look up at the bathhouse ceiling, now yellowed from years of steam and time. Above you, a spider web sways gently like it's waving hello. You think of tomorrow, of the gods you'll scrub again from the start, of the oils that will stain their carved arms once more, and the cat hairs that will settle back into Venus's ear. Everything will repeat in its own quiet, persistent, music-less way. You rise, brush the dust off your hem, nod to yourself, like a carver finishing a sculpture no one will admire, and you walk on through stone figures, steam, and the tiny hope that maybe one day one of these gods will smile back, or at least be bug free. You sit down on the cold stone step. In front of you is a basin full of soaking wet towels, still dripping slick with olive oil, and something that smells vaguely like fish marinade. No need to ask. You know exactly what they are: towels. From the massage room, the steam room, the changing room, and every other type of room Romans invented to make sure someone like you would always have something to clean. You start by giving each one a gentle shake, hoping the grime might fall out on its own, which it never does. Then you get to work with your hands. One hand grips the towel, the other scrubs while you breathe. Water splashes onto your clothes, seeps cold into your back. But you keep going, because someone will soon need a clean towel to wipe off the same things this one just absorbed. When you're done, you carry the towels to the back courtyard to hang them where a few dried vines cling to life and a cat is illegally napping on the clothesline. You gently shoo it away, not because you dislike it, but because you're jealous. It gets to sleep. You're about to begin the grand performance known as folding towels. No one ever taught you how to fold towels. There's no official chart, no guidebook titled The Art of Mythologically Correct Towel Folding. But you do it anyway. First a roll for compactness, then a fold in half for flatness. Sometimes you try triangles, then change your mind, then fold diagonally, then smooth it all out again, like greasy origami. You place the 10th towel on the pile, then the 15th, then the 20th. Your hands begin to shake from the cold. Your eyes sting from fatigue. Your knees ache from the stone floor. But you look at the growing stack, neat aligned, rising like soldiers at a flag ceremony. You think to yourself, if your life were this tidy, maybe you wouldn't be here. You admire your work. For 3 seconds, maybe 4 if you count the blink. Then the supervisor's voice cuts in. That pile's in the wrong zone. Dump it all in the other bin. You turn around. He's pointing to the dirty bin, the kind Venus herself would refuse to sit near. You sigh. Say nothing. You just start again, dropping each towel into the bin like love letters no one will read. Neatly, carefully, pointlessly. When the basket is full, you hoist it onto your shoulder. The damp weight seeps through your tunic to your neck. The smell, a mix of old oil sweat, cheap soap, and private disappointment, hangs in the air. But you keep walking step by step on a floor made dry by your own labor. Someone once told you, whatever you do, have pride. And once you believed them. But after the third time, refolding a pile, because a guest didn't like the crease direction, you learn pride doesn't keep towels dry. You enter the storage room, set the basket down, and wipe your brow with the same hand that just handled used towels. It tastes salty hot, real and honest reward for an unglamorous job. On the wall, an oil lamp flickers weakly. Beneath it, a curled calendar notes the upcoming free bath day. You look at it, almost laugh, but don't. You fold one more towel. Why not? Maybe Jupiter is watching you from the statue above and shaking his head over the uneven corners. And so you fold another. Shape doesn't matter, because clean isn't enough. You have to refold your life too, at least as tightly as a square towel. Just as you set down the last folded stack, you hear soft footsteps echo from the stone hallway. Not hurried, not loud, just a pair of dry leather sandals meeting the floor, like time walking alone. An older man enters, chin beard, neatly trimmed robe embroidered with gold thread, but eyes more tired than yours. He doesn't ask much. Just one soft sentence, I'd like to bathe in silence. His voice drifts in the steam, light fading like smoke. You nod. No directions needed. He knows his way, probably a regular, or someone long used to having others scrub the floors for him. You return to the supply room and pick the cleanest, whitest towel, folded with the last bit of patience you still had. Holding it with both hands, you bring it out and lay it carefully on the rim of the bath. The water's already prepared, just as you guessed, not too hot, not too cold, just right for him to feel noticed without needing to say thanks. He steps over, lifts the towel to his nose. His brow tightens. It smells old, he says. Not angry, not loud, just pure disappointment, like you played the wrong note in an otherwise perfect symphony. Then he lets the towel fall to the floor, not with force, but it lands like a quiet insult. You bend down, pick it up between two fingers. Soft, damp, unused, but now no longer fresh. You stand up, meet his eyes for a moment, not long, just enough to hold on to something unspoken. Then you nod, just a tiny nod like a sigh. I understand. That's all. You turn away. The towel in your hand now feels heavier than a bucket of water. You don't know if it's from moisture or silence. While he bathes, you finish the last section of floor. Wipe the final drops clinging to the tub. Rewipe the stone bench bearing the mark of a body. Then you sit in a shadowed corner, hands resting on knees doing nothing, just waiting. When he leaves the bath and walks past you, he doesn't look, doesn't even glance, as if you are part of the floor flat necessary and never mentioned. You wait a few more seconds, listen as his sandals fade down the hall, then silence. Just the sound of dripping water and the damp must clinging to your robe. You take the old smelling towel back, wring it out, hang it up, and let out a long, quiet breath. No one teaches you how to endure things like this. It's not on any chore chart, not in the floor cleaning schedule, not in any user manual for being human. You walk out toward the back. Well, rinse your hands in cold water. Soap bubbles drift into the drain, taking with them a thin layer of grime and all the irritation that never made it into words. Above, the moon rises hazy through the lingering steam and half-dead smoke of the furnace. You look up, then back down, because the work still isn't done. Maybe tomorrow the last guest will be different, or maybe he'll be exactly the same, but you'll still be here, folding, wiping, picking up the fragments of silence others leave behind, as if you're the only one left who remembers that every kind act begins where no one is looking. You sit on the floor back against the cold wall behind the caldarium. Your linen robe clings to your skin soaked through. The steam has lifted, but the musty smell lingers like a habit that never leaves. The room is quiet now. No more noise, no more guests. Just you and the sound of your own thoughts echoing off stone. You reach out and touch the floor, slick, cold, and greasy, like every other day, but today you can't even let out a sigh. Your body no longer reacts, it just continues. Hand on the mop, you drag it across a faint patch of water. Slowly. Not to clean, just to finish. The familiar smell clings to your hair, the backs of your hands, even the rim of your ears smoke old sweat-cooled bath water and soap made from things no one dares name. You might never bathe with that soap, but you've wiped, it lived in it, and now you're part of it. A soft sound comes from the eastern exit. You turn your head unhurried, unafraid. You're used to it. A co-worker walks in wearing the same coarse fabric, face drawn with exhaustion, eyes red from soot. No greeting, no questions, just a nod. And you nod back, a quiet ritual, shared by people who live below the threshold of being noticed. He begins sweeping from the far corner. You resume mopping from your side. No words, but the rhythm of broom and cloth. Meeting stone is enough to fill the space between two people simply existing, not for someone, not for something noble, just existing. You think of dinner, maybe half a roasted onion, a piece of hard bread, and some warm water if you're lucky. Then you think of tomorrow, likely the same as today. Maybe one extra slip, a new guest, a towel rejected for smelling strange. You quietly wish to go home, but then you wonder what is home. The room next, to the coal shed, the wooden bed with bedbugs, the robe you've patched 6 times, or is it this place where you know what to mop, what to fold, what to pick up, and no one else wants to? A drop of water falls from the ceiling onto your shoe. You watch it soak into the leather, then disappear, like all the apologies you never heard, like a part of you that vanished long ago back when you thought this job was temporary. The broom stops sweeping. Your coworker looks at you, then gestures outside. The wind's picking up, he says. One sentence, light as a breath. You nod. Stand up, mop still in hand, but your back's stiff. You drag it along as if it's part of your body, no boundary between you and the tool. You both step into the back courtyard. No more words. Above gray clouds drift silently like dirt on a freshly scrubbed floor. The wind truly arrives, not strong, not cold, just enough to make the oil lamp sway. You glance back at the building behind you, the grand bathhouse of the empire, where hundreds come to feel clean, to be served, to relax. And you, the last among them, are the one who wipes away what's left behind. No one remembers your name. No one asks how many hours you slept, how many meals you've had, what you dream of when you're worn out. But you're still here, still mopping, still nodding to coworkers, still understanding the silence behind every swish of cloth against stone, still folding towels, sweeping ash, collecting cat fur, and polishing the dignity of others while losing your own. You turn away, walking slowly toward the supply room, leaving behind the cleanest room in Rome. Not because anyone knows, not because anyone thanks you, but because it's what you do. And you've done it. You shuffle down a long hallway where flickering lamplight dances on stone walls stained by time. In your hand is a small iron hook curved at the tip, made for trimming lamp wicks, a tool no one notices, like the person holding it. You reach the first lamp. The night breeze brushes by, gentle but enough to make the flame waver, as if uncertain whether to stay or leave. You blow gently. One short breath, the flame dies, leaving the scent of smoke in your nose. And just like that, one part of the bathhouse goes to sleep, without a single good night. You keep going, the second lamp, the third, the 10th. Each extinguished flame brings more quiet, more shadow, and strangely, more peace. The light pulls back from every corner, leaving your eyes to rest, your mind to stop pretending to be alert. At the tepidarium, you find the final lamp. It flickers faintly as if it already knows. You don't rush. You sit beside it, back against the cold wall, arms at your sides, head tilted. The tiny flame trembles like a tired soul, just like you. You watch it as you would your own reflection, not because it's beautiful, but because it's real. A final bit of light at the end of a day, unseen, unneeded, but still it burns. Still. It waits still. It hopes someone will notice it was ever here. Like you. You lean in, blow gently. The flame goes out. A thin ribbon of smoke rises, then vanishes like an unspoken thought. The smell of lamp oil lingers sharp, warm, and familiar. You sit a while longer. No one calls you, no one waits. And that's the rare comfort of the day. A moment untouched, undisturbed, unjudged for the footprints you leave behind on wet stone. You think of tomorrow, then you stop. Because tomorrow isn't something to think about, it's something to endure. No big changes, no praise, no miracles, just a jug of warm water, a scrap of stale bread, and dozens of rooms to clean all over again. You rise hand on knee back, letting out a soft creak like an old wooden bench. You step into the hallway, now completely dark. Every sound has faded, leaving only the shuffle of cloth shoes and the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, like background music in a play no one watches. Before leaving the bathhouse, you turn around. The whole structure now lies in shadow. No light, no voices, no sign that hundreds soaked in its warmth today. Except you. You are the last to see the light, and the first to touch the silence. You nod to yourself no one sees, but you know, and sometimes that's enough. You walk away carrying with you the smell of smoke perfumed oil sweat and a little bit of leftover light. That room had no windows. No moonlight seeped in. No breeze passed through. Only the damp smell of lime, the scent of people sleeping in haste, and the creak of wood as someone shifted on the cold stone floor. You've gotten used to the darkness here. Darkness isn't frightening. It's the only thing that asks nothing of you. You turn over trying to find a spot where the straw mat doesn't jab your back with loose stones. Your spine protests loudly, but you pretend not to hear. Tonight, you don't need a beautiful dream. Just a stretch of time without mopping, without bowing, without saying, sorry for mistakes that weren't yours. A drop of water falls from the ceiling onto your forehead, cold, sharp, and perfectly untimely. You sigh, wipe your face with your sleeve, and curl up like a wet cat. The red mark from the bucket handle is still on your hand. It'll fade like everything else. You hear a soft cough from the corner of the room, the sound of someone who's done this job longer than you. That person once said, you'll get used to it. You're not sure if it was advice, a warning, or a spell to survive the night. You look at the ceiling, no stars, no frescoes, just a smear of shadow that occasionally glows with the memory of the oil lamp you snuffed out earlier. You remember the face of the last guest, the sound of stone tiles, the slick feel of oil on your hands, and you can't remember why you're still doing this job. There's a rustle in the corner. Rats. You're not startled. These nighttime visitors have been roommates for some time now. You've named them Maximus, Lucius, and the big one Brutus. Brutus often nibbles the bread you hide under your pillow. You pull the cowhide blanket up to your chest and try to close your eyes, but your eyelids won't cooperate like your legs this morning. Tired, but not resting. Drained, but not collapsing. You're not quite a person. You're part of the bathhouse floor. Durable, silent, and unseen. You try counting your breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then lose track. The sound of water flows through your head, the haunting sound of your profession, the drip from a cracked pipe, the splash of guests slapping water on each other, the trickle you mop up all day long. You turn again. Your cloak-turned pillow smells sour from old sweat. Familiar? The scent of reality. You smile a smile no one sees but still worth having. Then you sleep. Or at least lie still until the dream finds you. No Roman angels, no imperial glory. Just a dream of a day when you don't have to clean anything. Not because everything's clean, but because everything is gone. And in that dream, you're still wearing cloth slippers, still holding a mop, but you're walking across a stone floor so spotless it gleams like the sky after rain. No orders, no complaints, no towels thrown at you, just you and water. But this time it sings. No blame, no guilt, just water flowing past a cleaner and forgiving everything. In the dream, everything is soft, light like milk water, warm as a palm, voices echoing like flutes from afar. You wear a white robe, not the sweat soaked, coarse fabric, but smooth linen, clean, fragrant, like sun dried leaves. You walk lightly across a floor, already scrubbed, not slippery, no broken tiles lurking in shadow. Doors open wide to welcome you. The supervisor bows. A young woman offers a fresh towel, folded square like in dreams because it is one. You sit on a stone bench, soaking your feet in a basin of rose water. Steam rises fragrant and gentle. No shouting, no commands, no one calling your name in a voice hoarse as rusted iron. Someone approaches and kneels to wipe the water pooled around your feet. You want to say thank you, a phrase you've long wished someone would say to you. You look down at the person, and then freeze. It's you. It's you in your old robe, with your loose slippers, your familiar rag in hand. You with your hunched back, sunken eyes, swollen fingers, cleaning your own feet. The dream vanishes at that moment, like a soap bubble in a cold wind. You open your eyes, staring at the mildewed ceiling. No candlelight, no perfume, no laughter. Only the sound of morning wind slipping through stone cracks, cold, dry, and real as this life. You turn over and brush against the old bucket you left beside you last night's quick break. It tips, spilling the leftover water onto the corner of your robe. You chuckle softly, a soundless laugh like a sigh that never leaves your chest. No one hears it, but no one needs to. Across the room, your coworker still sleeps. His steady breath, proof that someone else has also mopped through every shift, through every day of history. You stand up, stretching your back. Your bones crackle like stone stairs after a heavy rain, but you're used to it. The dream still lingers in your mind, like a freckle left by sunlight long gone. You don't remember it all, but you remember one thing clearly: the feeling of sitting still, just sitting, not cleaning, not scrubbing, not apologizing. You pick up the rag, wring it dry, because the bathhouse will open again soon, because the first guest's footsteps will echo in about half an hour, and because, as you've long known, and no one needs to remind you, the cleaner is never the guest, except in dreams. Once, in many years, you hear birds chirping outside, but that's not what wakes you. What wakes you is the stomping of feet, the creaking of a wooden door swinging open, and a familiar hoarse voice. Get up, guests are coming. You open your eyes, your head heavy, like it's been packed with limestone. Your neck aches, your back is stiff, and your legs are numb, like you spent the night rolled up inside an old Roman loaf of bread. Your hand, even before your mind is fully awake, instinctively reaches for the rag, like a reflex etched into your bloodstream. There it is, wet, crumpled, and smelling just like yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. A coworker walks past and glances at you, smirking. You look like you've been here forever. You chuckle back dryly. Feels like it. You stretch your bones, crack like cobblestones, stepped on for the first time after rain. You walk into the bathhouse, still scented with cheap oils, still lit by weary candles, and still dirty as if history never bothered to scrub. Everything's ready, meaning nothing's truly ready. You bend down and begin mopping the stone floor from your usual corner. The first stain is a damp footprint. The second is something that looks like oil. The third, you don't want to know. The first guest of the day shuffles in yawning and drops his sandals on the floor. The wet splat sounds like a private symphony, one only you can hear, and only you understand the low notes. You mop, and mop, and mop again. No one asks your name. No one notices you're there. But every stone under their feet has felt your rag. Every bench they sit on, every stain they don't see, you've scrubbed it, caught it, wiped it clean, with the part of your life that no one ever writes down. By noon, you'll eat bread. By evening, you'll gather towels. By night, you might dream a small dream if you have enough strength left to dream at all. But not now. Now is the time to start again. From the floor, from the bucket, from the name no one says. Because in a Roman bathhouse, everything repeats, except gratitude, and you keep working, like part of the stone, like part of history, unseen, but there, every day, every night, every nameless loop. In the blurry glow of the last oil lamp, you close your eyes. No more arguments. No more sandals slipping on wet tile. No more someone yelling service from the other room. Just the drip of a water basin in the corner, steady, unjudging. And that was just one day. One day where no one said your name. No one said thank you. A day of dirty water buckets, worn out rags, and a silence as long as the hallway to the hypocaustum. Tomorrow you'll mop the floor again, scrub the walls, collect hair, gather ash. Maybe you'll be replaced. Maybe you'll be forgotten. Maybe you won't wake up. But if you do, you'll begin again. From the cold step, from the bent broom, from the breath that's not quite full yet. Tonight at least you still breathe, still lie down, still hear that quiet dripping, like Rome's lullaby of sorrow. Sleep now, bathhouse cleaner. Even if no one knows your name, you're the one who keeps all of Rome from slipping on its own glory.